Chapter 1028. Tiangang Realm Expert? Fang Wangshu stared in astonishment at the crown prince. To be able to annihilate an army of tens of thousands with a single strike, and even suppress the auras of so many experts, in his knowledge, only heavenly dipper sovereigns would be able to do this. Moreover, they would not be ordinary Tiangang Realm experts. They must be the cream of the crop. However, given the prince's arrogance, she did not care to explain. Faced with Fang Wangshu's question, she did not give any reply. She grabbed out with one hand and carried Fang Wangshu away like she was carrying a little chick, leaving behind a bloody scene. By the time the imperial army climbed back up, they were greeted by a sea of blood that stretched as far as the eye could see. The pungent stench of blood assaulted their nostrils, and countless body fluids and organs were scattered across the battlefield, causing countless people to retch. When Shen Wanzhou saw this scene, the gleam in his eyes burst out. He could be said to be the only one present who had clearly seen the palm attack which the prince had sent descending from the sky earlier. However, it was precisely because he had seen this palm attack clearly that he felt even more astonished. A 30,000-man army and several tens of Disher realm experts, although most of them have only condensed a few or over 10 acupuncture points, to think that they were wiped out with a single attack. Shen Wanzhou thought to himself, the great Jin dynasty's royal family really has deep roots. At this stage, other than His Majesty, there's still more than one Tiangang realm expert. The images of Fang Xinjian and the prince flashed in his mind. With these two Tiangang realm experts around, even if they were unable to rebuild the country, they would at least be able to live in a corner. The news of Prince Xian's vanguard being wiped out spread through the entire city like the wind. Most of the commoners had been spared from a battle, so they naturally cheered. Most of the officials of the imperial court focused their attention on that lady called Marie. In the palace, Fang Xinjian's eyes opened slightly as he looked at Fang Wangshu. Your Prince Xian's eldest son, Fang Wangshu? Right now, Fang Wangshu no longer seemed to be as nervous as before. He stood before Fang Xinjian in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. He cupped his hands toward Fang Xinjian and said, "Greetings, Your Majesty." The prince said impatiently, "What's the point of keeping this kind of trash? Can't we just kill them?" Fang Wangshu was afraid that this young emperor was insensible and would kill him directly. Therefore, he immediately said, "Your Majesty, I've lost this time around. However, if you're thinking of relying on a Tiangang realm expert to turn the situation around, then you're underestimating the entire world and my father too much." "Go on, I'm listening," Fang Xinjian said lightly. Prince let out a cold snort, not caring about what Fang Wangshu said at all. However, Fang Wangshu continued to say, "Right now, the world is in a state of chaos, and the various sects in the pugilistic world are stirring up trouble. Almost every first-rate influence has the shadow of a Tiangang realm expert." Fang Xinjian said calmly, "In that case, Prince Xian also has the shadow of one?" Of course. For the sake of his own safety, Fang Wangshu naturally did not mind divulging some information appropriately to ensure his own safety. Father has been working hard in the Beiyuan region for 20 years. He doesn't just have 300,000 Xiantian realm cavalry and over 1,000 Disher realm experts. Apart from that, 2 factions in the 3 mountains' 4 peaks have agreed to support Father. Moreover, our army has already taken over 2 regions. Our foundations are very deep and we're the strongest in the world. Your Majesty, to be honest, although this lady's martial arts are strong, she'll only be able to protect herself when faced with such a situation." Fang Wangshu spoke with fervor and assurance. The more he spoke, the more confident he became. In his opinion, it was true that his father already had the upper hand in the overall situation of the Battle of Dragons and had the best start. Next, as long as they took down the Jing region, they would be in control of 3 regions and a 1 million army. They would also inherit the royal family's orthodoxy and a complete imperial court system. Moreover, with the support of the 3 mountains' 4 peaks, no one would be able to go up against them, be it in the imperial court or in the pugilistic world. However, after Feng Wangshu said this, the young emperor did not panic like he had imagined. She continued to be expressionless, as if she had not heard what Feng Wangshu had said earlier. This also messed up what Feng Wangshu had wanted to say next. Is that so? Feng Shijian tapped his fingers. If that's the case, then it's true that we can't let you guys continue to grow. Although he had inherited the throne of this parallel world, he had no interest in the world or anything like that. However, now that he had the Lives Wisdom seal, his interest in ruling over the world was piqued. After hearing Feng Wangshu's threat, Feng Xinjian immediately placed his first target on Prince Xen. He looked at the prince and said, "Maria, I'll leave this matter to you. Reorganize the entire Jing region and bring it under the imperial court's rule. Then wipe out Prince Xian's faction and take back control of the Serene region and Beiyuan region." At the thought of how the Lives Wisdom seal would be able to unleash its effects after gaining control over the 3 regions, Feng Xinjian felt a little anticipation. The prince broke into an excited smile. She had been sealed for 1,000 years, and after she woke up, she had gone through a series of great battles. Then she was sealed once again. Now that she had the chance to unleash her abilities as she pleased, she had long been unable to wait. Ha 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 ha, you should have done this a long time ago. It's just a trial for Tier 6 of the divine level. There's no need to have any reservations. She then lifted Feng Wangshu and said, "Then he'll be mine as well. He can lead the way for me." Feng Wangshu became nervous. He looked at Feng Xinjian and the prince as if he was looking at 2 illiterates. "Are you guys crazy? Do you know what you're doing? Your Majesty, we can totally join forces. We're all members of the royal family. Are we going to have internal strife and let those feudal vassals reap the benefits?" Ever since Feng Wangshu saw the prince's means, it was true that Feng Wangshu did not wish to go to war with the imperial court. In his opinion, it would be better if both parties joined forces temporarily or if Prince Xian's faction changed their target, such as attacking the Green region or Yu region. After all, Prince Xian's faction would definitely suffer a great loss even if they were to kill such an outstanding expert amongst Tiangang realm experts. However, he had not expected that these 2 people would be like lunatic. They did not listen to his advice at all and wanted to fight to the death. "Shut up." As the prince let out a soft bellow, Feng Wangshu felt as if his mouth was being pressed up by an invisible force, and he was unable to say another word. He tried to circulate his essential qi, but he sensed that his essential qi was sealed up in his dantian. He was unable to use even a hint of it. Looking at Feng Xinjian's gradually disappearing figure, Feng Wangshu thought coldly, "You'll regret this." Chapter 1029. In the Serene region's regional overseer manor, the original regional overseer had surrendered a long time ago. Right now, the person who was staying in this stretch of exquisite buildings was naturally the Serene region's true ruler, Prince Xian Fengingtan. Prince Xian had just passed 40 years of age. In addition to his powerful martial arts cultivation, he was at the pinnacle of his life in terms of experience and qualities. Moreover, along the way, he had defeated the various tribes in the plains and occupied the Serene region and Beiyuan region. He had been unrivaled, winning all his battles. Even feudal vassals from afar had sent various envoys to get on good terms with him. All of these seemed to indicate that Prince Xian would have a bright future ahead of him. This also caused countless generals and officials in the 2 regions to make up their minds to cozy up to him. Right now, Prince Xian was wearing a crown and an official's robe. Each and every one of his actions exuded an increasingly imposing aura, causing the subordinates and officials to become increasingly respectful toward him. He threw a glance at the booklet in his hand and laughed out loud. "Everyone, that son of mine attacked rashly. Thankfully, His martial arts aren't bad and he has already taken down the divine martial pass. His troops have arrived at the divine capital. A general stepped out, smiled, and said, "Congratulations, Prince. Right now, the prince has taken down the divine martial pass and his troops have arrived at the city. Those men in the divine capital have probably been frightened out of their wits and won't be able to sleep well at night." A few officials immediately stepped out to fawn and congratulate him. Prince Exian smiled and did not say a word. It was only after they were done speaking that he said, "Although Wangshu has 30,000 elite troops under him, the divine capital is the imperial court's core after all. There are also several tens of thousands of soldiers from the Forbidden Army. With Shun Wanzhou and Wang Yong holding down the fort, it's impossible for him to take down the city with just his troop." He then looked at a general who was dressed in white armor and said, "Yi Ran, lead the Abyss Tiger and Steel Formation armies to provide assistance to Wangshu. On this day next month, I'll be sitting in the Hall of Supreme Harmony to discuss matters." Yi Ran stepped out, cupped his fists, and replied solemnly, "I'll obey your orders." Prince Exian nodded in satisfaction. Yi Ran was the strongest general under him, a Disha realm expert who had cleared 72 acupuncture points. With the Abyss Tiger and Steel Formation armies under him, even a Tiangang realm expert would not be able to deal with them. Moreover, Yi Ran was an orphan whom Fang Xinjian had taken in since young. There was no need to mention how loyal Yi Ran was to him. After making arrangements for Yi Ran, Prince Exian drew out another document and tossed it onto the table, saying, "This is an envoy sent by Li Region's Wang Daoyuan. He says that he wants to marry his daughter to Wangshu. What do you guys think of this?" The top civil official under King Exian, Wang Hai, who was also at the pinnacle of the Disha realm, stepped out and said, "The Li region is a place where two tigers are fighting. Wang Daoyuan and the regional overseer, Ning Baichuan, are attacking each other. They probably can't hold on any longer and thus want to join forces with us. Moreover, Lizhou is located to the south of Jingzhou, a place that our army must fight for. The regional governor, Ning Baichuan, is from the Mountain River sect and is arrogant and unruly. If he defeats Wang Daoyuan, he probably won't submit to our army." "Elder Wang means that it's a marriage alliance?" Prince Exian's fingers knocked on the table rhythmically. Discussions immediately broke out in the hall. It was as if the divine capital was already under their feet, and they had to quickly come up with a plan to deal with the Li region. However, before the many officials could come to a conclusion from their discussion, a trusted aide walked up to Prince Exian and whispered into his ear. At the next moment, an explosive bang rang out from under Prince Exian's feet, blasting the marble on the hall's floor into a large area of fragments. Prince Exian's face was filled with fury as he said coldly, "That's all for today. Everyone can disperse. Yi Ran and Elder Wang stay behind." Although the others did not understand what was going on, when they saw the fury in Prince Exian's eyes, they did not dare to act rashly and left. Prince Exian then looked at the servants and said, "You guys can leave as well." After everyone left, Prince Exian said with a grim countenance, "The 30,000-man army under Wangshu has been wiped out and he himself has been captured." Yi Ran lifted his head abruptly, and killing intent seemed to flash in his eyes. "Who is it?" "The people from the imperial court," Prince Exian said coldly. "It's said that it's a woman." "A woman?" Wang Hai said solemnly. "To be able to do this single-handedly, she must be a Tiangang realm expert. Since when did the imperial court have such an expert?" "It's probably the people from the demon sect." Prince Exian's eyelids drooped down, and his tone was like the cold wind from the north as he shared his guess calmly. Previously, there were rumors in the divine capital that a Tiangang realm expert from the royal family took action to suppress Chao Yuan's rebellion. Do you think I don't understand the royal family's situation? I originally thought that it was Fang Xian who was blowing his own trumpet, but by the looks of it, I was wrong. Chao Yuan has always been in contact with the demon sect. Back when he was on the Western expedition, his relationship with the illusory emotions path was already unclear. Prince Xian's gaze suddenly turned distant, as if he had drifted back to that great battle that had happened several decades ago. The other two people present were both Prince Xian's trusted aides and were no fools. When they heard Prince Xian's words, they immediately reacted. Wang Hai frowned and said, "Prince, are you saying that the rumors from earlier are fake?" Chao Yuan wasn't suppressed and instead successfully took control of the divine capital with the demon sect's support? That's right. A hint of understanding flashed in Yi Ran's eyes. Even if Chao Yuan succeeds, he won't have a legitimate reason to do so. Instead, he faked his death and escaped, and the demon sect's experts became the royal family's retainers. His eyes emitted hints of killing intent. The illusory emotions path's sect master, Zhao Yinglan, is also a woman. At this point, the three of them were extremely certain of the current situation. After the demon sect attacked the divine capital and took control of the young emperor, they passed down a fake imperial edict and even spread fake news that the royal family had hidden a Tiangang realm expert. Zhao Yinglan naturally became the royal family's expert and was also the culprit behind the defeat of the 30,000-man army. At the thought of this, the fury in Prince Xian's eyes grew even stronger. The death of 30,000 elites was equivalent to him having one of his claws chopped off. Moreover, if this news were to spread out, it would probably deal a blow to the army's morale. It seems that the one we'll have to deal with next is the illusory emotions path's demonic woman. Prince Xian let out a cold laugh. Do the demon sect's brats really think that they can fight their way back? He then looked toward Yi Ran and said, "You'll still lead the army to attack, but set up camp at the Divine Martial Pass first. Don't let them take a single step into the serene region." He then looked toward the sky outside the house and said proudly, "The people from the 3 mountains 4 peaks will naturally take care of the demon sect." The demon sect's 7 paths and the 3 mountains 4 peaks had a feud of several centuries. Prince Xian understood very well that once he revealed the demon sect's situation to them, there would be no need for him to take the initiative to request it. These righteous leaders who had dominated the pugilistic world for several centuries would immediately rush over to the divine capital. Wang Hai also understood and said, "Let them fight amongst themselves first. We'll continue clearing up the serene region. There are many young and strong people in the serene region, and there are also many local sects in the pugilistic world. If we subdue all of them, we'll be able to gather an army of over 300,000 men." Chapter 1030. Due to the imperial court's lack of control, the Jing region where the divine capital was located was still under the control of the imperial court in name. However, in reality, most of the orders from the divine capital had been put off. However, this situation changed very quickly with the prince's arrival. With his powerful individual strength, his ability to move at akin to light speed, and the power of spatial translocation, the prince led the 10,000-strong Forbidden Army and used spatial translocation to launch raids across 1,000 lis. Within 3 days, he swept through the entire Jing region. No one could fend off his attacks. This was especially so when he had the ability to spatial translocation, which was at Tier 6 of the divine level. He could lead the 10,000-strong army and instantly appear in any city or county in the Jing region. Within 3 days, not only were all the resistance forces disarmed, but the imperial court also sent out a large number of people to take over the entire Jing region. This was also the divine capital's advantage. Even at the end of the dynasty, there were still a large number of talents at the middle and lower levels gathered here. After all, the divine capital's education system, martial arts, and cultural learning atmosphere had always been the best in the world. If this were the era when the dynasty was at its peak, it would be hard for a large number of mediocre talents to stand out if they were to continue staying in the divine capital. However, right now, a large number of people were needed to take up the jobs at the middle and lower levels that had been vacated. Therefore, it might be a little troublesome for other influences to quickly digest a region. However, it was a piece of cake for the imperial court. All the leaders were executed, and the rebellious army was broken up and reorganized. Many low-level officials and members of great clans who had no way to stand out in the divine capital pounced toward the empty positions while crying out with greedy gazes. In the palace, Fang Xinjian, who had performed the live's wisdom seal, clearly sensed something different. As the prince continued to expand his territory, the pitch-black areas outside the divine capital were lit up one after another. In the blink of an eye, the territory that he could control encompassed the entire Jing region. The entire Jing region's terrain appeared in his mind, and it was filled with densely packed lights of various colors. During this period of time, as the prince had been conquering and occupying, Fang Xinjian had connected the seas of wisdom of the people in one territory after another into his own sea of wisdom. By now, the entire Jingzhou had become a massive cloud computing cluster. At that moment, the computing resources that he could mobilize had also become extremely massive. His deduction of high-dimensional sword techniques had also become much faster. The scroll that was used to seal the prince floated before Fang Xinjian. As Fang Xinjian's consciousness changed, the scroll kept changing in size and shape. Regardless of whether it's the higher dimensions or the lower dimensions, they are unable to come into contact with other dimensions. In a real battle, there isn't much of an advantage. In the end, it's still a battle of martial wills. Only by mastering the method of dimensional transformation and opening up the other dimensions that are curled up in space will we have a real advantage. But if I just rely on myself to deduce it, even with the wisdom of living beings seal, the speed is too slow. Fang Xinjian's recent deduction of high-dimensional sword techniques by relying on the rich computing abilities in the entire Jing region had further verified this idea of his. Moreover, he did not have any experience in this, unlike Erbian, who had reached an extremely high level in the past. Fang Xinjian then thought of this world's Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese, as well as the so-called Great Tao realm. Perhaps the profoundness of this world will be the turning point for my sword arts to achieve another breakthrough. And I mustn't give up on the royal heavenly great art either. Just then, Fang Xinjian's brows raised slightly. His eyes seemed to be able to penetrate through 1,000 lis of void space, looking in the direction of the divine martial pass. The prince had made a move. He's really anxious. However, Fang Xinjian was not worried. Although this world was filled with many profoundness, in the ordinary secular world, even Tiangang realm experts would at most be equivalent to a peak tier 5 divine level expert. Their understanding of the world would not be comparable to an expert like the prince. Simultaneously, at the foot of the divine martial pass, 1,000 black-clothed and black-armored cavalrymen stood proudly 1,000 meters away from the city walls. Their backs were very straight, and their chests were raised high. Even when facing the black mass of Prince Xian's army at the top of the divine martial pass, they still wore expressions of confidence and courage. It was all because of the lady who was standing at the very front of their team. Over the past few days, they had personally witnessed how powerful the prince was. Regardless of whether it was his amazing spatial translocation or his majestic prowess that seemed to be able to topple mountains and overturn seas, all of them had astonished them. Following a leader like this, even going to war became an enjoyable thing. They only needed to clean up the mess at the end and then be able to lie down and wait for their contributions. The prince's beauty and extraordinary disposition made countless soldiers in the Forbidden Army fall in love with her, hiding their admiration for her firmly in their hearts. After all, regardless of whether it was her martial arts or her looks, she was a goddess that was not to be profaned in the eyes of many soldiers. Even some Disha realm experts would not have the courage to pursue her. They could only keep their admiration in their hearts and worship her as a goddess. Right now, Feng Wangshu, who was next to the prince, was looking at the prince with an even more complicated gaze. There were hints of fear toward this woman, as well as feelings of admiration and possessiveness that were hard to suppress. At the thought of embracing such a female expert in his arms and doting on her even more, his heart could not help but palpitate intensely. However, at the thought of Feng Wangshu's unbelievable martial arts, this thought suddenly dissipated. Right now, in his eyes, the prince's martial arts were definitely top-notch existences amongst those at the Tiangang realm. He even suspected that the prince was already close to the legendary Great Dao realm. Looking at this fairy-like character, it was the first time that Feng Wangshu felt a sense of inferiority. However, looking at the divine martial pass, he still summoned his courage and said to the prince, "Miss Ma, please allow me to go up and persuade the guards at the divine martial pass to surrender. Otherwise, if there's a great battle, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering, and the ones who die will be our royal family's troops." The prince threw a cold glance at Feng Wangshu and said, "That's fine too. I'll give you the time it takes for an incense stick to burn out. After that, if you guys don't surrender, I'll make a move personally." It was the prince's intention to bring Feng Wangshu along and let him lead the way. Although the prince had not really built a huge harem like what she had boasted about, she still cultivated the royal heavenly great art and had conquered a large number of countries in the past. She had rich experience in ruling over them. Feng Wangshu let out a soft sigh and rode the white horse toward the divine martial pass. Above the divine martial pass, Yiran wore silver armor and held a long halberd, looking at the troops in the distance with a proud expression. Humph, even 1,000 troops dare to invade? Yiran naturally had reasons to be proud. As Prince Xian's adopted son, his aptitude had always been the most outstanding among the people around him. Therefore, he had received guidance from countless famous cultivators since he was young. He had used the best medicinal cuisine and gone through the highest level of cultivation. This allowed him to reach the pinnacle of the Disha realm at a young age and condense a total of 72 acupuncture points. None of Prince Xian's sons were a match for him. The raging flames of war that he cultivated was a famous divine technique in the world. Moreover, there was a 50,000-man army stationed at the divine martial pass, and they were one of Prince Xian's most elite troops. There were over 100 Disha realm cultivators. Chapter 1031. For all the armies in the world, clearing the conception and governing vessels, reaching the Xiantian realm, and becoming human-shaped tanks were the most basic requirements. Disha realm experts were elites no matter where they were. If they could condense 30 or more acupuncture points, they would be able to suppress an area. If they could condense 50 or more acupuncture points, they would be able to become the sect leader of an ordinary sect. Even though over 100 Disha realm experts had only condensed over 10 acupuncture points, they were not to be underestimated no matter where they were. They were also Prince Xian's painstaking effort over many years. With such a group of experts joining forces, they could overturn the entire divine capital. With such an elite troop, it was no longer the city walls protecting them in the divine martial pass. Instead, they were the ones protecting the city walls. With the support of this army, Yiran even had the confidence to go up against a Tiangang realm expert. At this moment, a person rode a horse out from the enemy's formation. The deputy general was about to give the order to shoot him down when Yiran raised his hand to stop him. His vital energy condensed around his eyes, and several of his acupoints immediately began to operate, allowing him to clearly see everything that was a kilometer away. "Big brother Wangshu?" Yiran raised his brows and gave it some thought before instructing, "Let him in." He then instructed the deputy general, "Get Li Yu, Lu Yuan, and the others to come over." It was too strange for Feng Wangshu to come over alone. If he was the enemy's commander, he would definitely not let him off so easily. Worried that this was some trick from the demon sect, He called over a few of the strongest cultivators under him. A short moment later, Fang Wangshu was brought over to Yi Ran's side. The moment he saw him, he said, "Xiao Yezi, stop." Hearing the words Xiao Yezi, Yi Ran's brows raised. This was how Fang Wangshu had addressed him when they were young. When Fang Wangshu said this, Yi Ran could already confirm that he was not an impostor. However, the content of Fang Wangshu's words made him even more puzzled. "Stop." Fang Wangshu nodded. "The enemy's commander is called Mali. Miss Ma's martial arts have probably reached the pinnacle. Even Tiangang realm experts won't be a match for her." "Miss Ma?" Yi Ran raised his brows and asked puzzledly, "Who is this Miss Ma?" Fang Wangshu said, "She's the person who killed my 30,000-man army." Hearing that the other party was the expert who had killed the 30,000-man army, Yi Ran's expression immediately turned grim. Then, he heard Fang Wangshu's detailed description of how the other party had crushed the 30,000-man army with a single palm, and how he had performed a remarkable ability to move the forbidden army several tens of thousands of li away, or even several hundred li away. There was also the power that could move cities, move mountains and split rivers, move as fast as light, and all sorts of miraculous martial arts. If it could be said that Yi Ran was still listening very patiently in the beginning, then towards the end, his eyes were already filled with impatience. Clearly, Fang Wangshu had forgotten something. He tried his best to portray the prince's great power that he had seen and witnessed, hoping to dispel Yi Ran's determination to resist. However, they didn't expect that when a fact was too exaggerated, even if it was the truth, very few people would be willing to believe it unless they personally witnessed it. The various remarkable abilities that the prince had displayed far surpassed the abilities of the Tiangang realm experts in this world. Therefore, when Yi Ran heard Fang Wangshu's reply, he merely smiled coldly and said, "In that case, this Miss Ma's martial arts are really so amazing that there's no need for us to resist?" As he spoke, his right hand slowly stroked the long halberd in his hand. "That's right." Fang Wangshu did not hear the abnormality in Yi Ran's tone. He said solemnly, "The other party's martial arts aren't to be underestimated. If we were to start a fight now, we'd just be sacrificing ourselves for nothing. There's no meaning to it. Little Yi, listen to my advice. It's not good to start a fight with her." "Ha ha ha ha." A low and deep laugh rang out from Yi Ran's mouth. He stood up slowly, and his 2-meter-tall body stretched out completely. Each of his muscles seemed to contain a destructive power, and his thick palm grabbed onto the long halberd like he was grabbing onto a huge dragon that kept on leaping about. When the long halberd in his hand cut across the air, streams of disha cheese extended out from the 72 acupuncture points all over his body. When they came into contact with the air, they exuded a strange purple color. Accompanied by his series of actions, the surrounding ground slowly shattered, and many small pebbles floated up into midair from the impact of essential cheese. "Elder brother, as the #1 general under foster father, I'm under foster father's orders to lead the Abyss Tiger Army and the Steel Formation Army to be stationed at this divine martial pass. I mustn't take a single step back." Yi Ran's eyes narrowed slowly, and the disha cheese he exuded became increasingly intense. Even with Fang Wangshu's martial arts, he felt his hair stand up. The deputies in the surroundings seemed to be unable to endure the gushing waves of disha cheese, and kept on retreating. Right now, Yi Ran was like a human-shaped ferocious beast. Every inch of his skin was exuding an astonishing pressure. "You want me to lay down my arms and surrender before even fighting a battle against these 1,000 people?" Yi Ran said, gritting his teeth. "Then from today onward, how am I going to face foster father? How am I going to bring the men under me to fight on the battlefield?" Fang Wangshu fell silent. In the end, he could only say, "If you fight them, you'll die." "I don't believe it." Yi Ran swung the long halberd in his hand, pointing diagonally at the Imperial Court's troops that were 1,000 meters away. He said calmly, "Elder brother, The ones in control of the divine capital right now are the demon sect's illusory emotions path. There's a 99% chance that the so-called Miss Ma you speak of is the illusory emotions path's sect master, Zhao Yinglan. Void translocation? As fast as light? How can there be a Tiangang realm expert like the one you speak of in this world? The only possibility is that you've been struck by that demonic woman Zhao's pathos of heaven. Pathos of heaven was another famous martial technique of the illusory emotions path. Back then, Fu Daoxian had also wanted to use this technique to deal with the young emperor. This martial technique could plant a seed of affection in the enemy's heart, causing the other party to be affected by the user's every frown, smile, and action. In the end, the other party would become a complete slave. In Yi Ran's opinion, this was the most logical explanation and also the only one. Yi Ran. Fang Wangshu's essential qi burst out, and his 45 acupuncture points trembled simultaneously. His entire body tensed up. You're going to get all your subordinates killed. However, just as he was about to make a move, a huge dragon let out a thunderous roar and pressed down on him. With an explosive boom, the houses on the city walls were blasted into ashes. A long halberd that was like a huge dragon pressed down on Fang Wangshu's right shoulder, pressing him down onto the ground. Seething powers continued to extend out until they collided with the army's chi field. It was only because of this that the divine martial pass city walls did not shatter. Elder brother, don't force me to kill you for messing up my army's morale. A gaze that was like that of a ferocious beast encompassed Fang Wangshu's body, and wanton pernicious auras gushed forth like they had condensed into something material. Fang Wangshu circulated his essential qi, wanting to stand up. Stop it, Yi Ran. You don't understand at all. The one who doesn't understand is you. Yi Ran held onto the halberd with one hand, suppressing all of Fang Wangshu's resistance. Foster father is the one who wants to unify the world and revive the great Jin dynasty. I'm the one who wants to bring him up to the throne. Anyone who tries to stop me will be killed by me personally. Even you are no exception. Rumble. A terrifying power surged out from the long halberd, and seething air currents gushed out in all directions with the point of contact between the two of them. They pressed down on the generals and soldiers in the surroundings, causing them to keep on retreating. It was as if a force 12 gales had been stirred up. The pressure caused Fang Wangshu's entire body to tremble. He could not even stand up, let alone put up any resistance. Fang Wangshu still wanted to say something, but at the next moment, a hint of sorrow flashed in his eyes. It's too late. Yi Ran frowned and turned to look at the sky. It was unknown when streams of golden light had appeared in the sky, forming many hand seals. All sorts of hand seals were scattered in the sky, exuding an extremely solemn aura. Chapter 1032. Surrender quickly. Fang Wangshu bellowed furiously, and streams of essential qi burst out from his body. Despite the pressure from Yi Ran's long halberd, he stood up inch by inch. Are you trying to get everyone killed? Right now, the fury in Fang Wangshu's heart was about to materialize. He had a strong urge to press Yi Ran into the mud and give him a good beating. However, the reality was that he was not Yi Ran's match at all. Lie down. An explosive bang rang out, and Yi Ran's long halberd gathered power once again, instantly knocking Fang Wangshu down once again. Then the long halberd was like a huge black dragon, cutting across a series of afterimages in the air and heading straight for the prince, who was 1,000 meters away. He let out an explosive bellow, and waves that could be seen by the naked eye appeared from his mouth. It was as if a thunderbolt had exploded in midair. Everyone, listen up. Follow me to slay the demons. Roar. Over 100 extremely powerful auras soared up, and all the Disha realm experts erupted at the same time. At this moment, the air seemed to have condensed into a solid state, and all the essential qis connected together, forming a qi field that encompassed the entire divine martial pass. Under the pressure of the chi field, the entire divine martial pass showed signs of sinking slightly. Even the mountain rocks in the surroundings started to shatter and break down. At the next moment, the seemingly material chi field seethed once again. The soldiers from the Abyss Tiger Army and the Steel Formation Army had made their move. Overwhelming essential chis burst out, bringing up a violent tempest and a thunderstorm like the ocean. As the essential chis seethed, they kept on rubbing against the atmosphere, producing all sorts of reactions. In that instant, strong gales seethed and thunderbolts roared. Streams of strong gales blew out in all directions with the divine martial pass as the center. Streams of purple lightning flashed in the sky, displaying destructive powers. In the divine martial pass, streams of waves and distortions that could be seen by the naked eye kept on seething to and fro. Even the space had started to distort from the pressure of the powers. When over 100 Disha realm experts and 50,000 Xiantian realm experts unleashed their powers together, their prowess could be said to be able to destroy the world. Even Tiangang realm experts would probably have to avoid the brunt of this. This was the power of an army. This was the advantage of numbers. Right now, all of this power was controlled by Yi Ran and gathered onto his body. Popping sounds rang out ceaselessly from his body, and the 72 insight acupoints within his body seemingly came to life. As they pulsed, a powerful suction force emerged from his insight acupoint. There seemed to be 72 black holes appearing on Yi Ran's body, wildly engulfing the powers in the chi field. Green veins popped up on the surface of his body. He felt that the power in his body was boundless. At this moment, he even had a feeling that even if a Heavenly Dipper realm expert appeared in front of him, he would be able to kill them with a single punch. "Big brother, watch carefully. Watch how I kill all these demon sect bastards." As he spoke, Yi Ran slashed the halberd in his hand toward the sky. As his chi field swelled up, streams of crimson flames gathered on his halberd. Yi Ran did not have the slightest intention of underestimating his opponent. The moment he made his move, he circulated the raging flames of war to the extreme. The 72 acupuncture points in his body also became one with the surrounding chi field, and the raging flames of war surged out. As the long halberd slashed out furiously toward the sky, crimson-red shock waves burst out. It was as if a long spear was going to pierce through the heavens, stirring up the winds and clouds in the world. With each move, the scenery of the mountains and rivers changed, the wind and clouds seethed, and an aura of great chaos gushed out. Wherever it passed by, all matter seemed to enter a state of chaos, and no stable structures could be maintained. Yi Ran's talent in martial arts was outstanding, and the power in this halberd attack was condensed to an extreme. Within the crimson-red shock waves, there would be a myriad of microscopic black holes appearing and disappearing under the impact of the power every second. Wherever this crimson-red shock waves passed by, the atmosphere would collapse. However, within a few meters away from the waves, there would only be strong gales seething and the temperature rising. They were not directly affected by the attack. This showed how condensed this attack was. Faced with Yi Ran's full-powered attack, the prince, who was 1,000 meters away, revealed a hint of a brutal smile. His palm pressed down slightly as if he was crushing an ant. At the next moment, a golden palm holding a lotus seal in the sky came pressing down explosively toward Yi Ran's halberd attack like a meteor from beyond the heavens. An explosive rumble rang out, and as the two gushes of power collided, air currents gushed out in all directions like tsunamis. Piercing light exploded in the sky like a myriad of nuclear missiles had exploded. Simultaneously, the countless experts on the divine martial pass let out agonizing cries. Their chi fields shattered inch by inch, and the entire divine martial pass instantly collapsed. It was as if gravity had suddenly increased by several tens of times. The city walls collapsed almost instantly, and countless soldiers were buried alive amidst agonizing cries. The two gushes of power collided, and the repulsive force struck Yi Ran's body across space. He felt as if all the acupuncture points and meridians throughout his body had been crushed by a mountain range. He was covered in blood, and half of the bones in his body were broken. However, he still clenched his teeth tightly, and the battle intent in his eyes grew even stronger. Fight to the death! Roar! Accompanied by an enraged bellow, the abyss tiger and steel formation continued to unleash streams of chi field, encompassing Yi Ran's body despite the situation. The warriors who were still clear-headed continued to unleash streams of chi field, encompassing Yi Ran. Stop it! Fang Shuran bellowed. You'll be beaten to death. Never surrender. Streams of blood vessels burst out from Yi Ran's eyes. As he let out an enraged bellow, the ground under his feet trembled intensely. It was as if there was a magnitude 10 earthquake, and the divine martial pass completely collapsed into ruins. The ground seemed to have been torn apart, and many extremely deep ravines were formed. Countless soldiers cried out agonizingly as they fell into the darkness. As the ground trembled intensely, Yi Ran shot out like a crimson meteor. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the prince. The long halberd in his hand was encompassed by a stretch of crimson plasma flames. Under the intense friction, the entire spear and halberd kept on moving forward and breaking down. Die, demonic woman! The raging flames of war's strongest move. World overturning starts from today. All the essential chis throughout his body went berserk, and the meridians, physical body, and bones in his body were all overturned. It could be said to be a completely self-destructive move. The meaning behind this move was to overturn the world in one's body in exchange for the world outside one's body to be overturned. With a single move, Yi Ran gathered all of his strength, determination, and courage. He dared to change the world. With this move, all the circulating powers in the world within a range of 1,000 meters would instantly be reversed. All things in the world would collapse, and all living beings would be wiped out. Even Yi Ran himself would not be able to survive. Chapter 1033. Before the attack arrived, the bodies of the 1,000 members of the Forbidden Army had already started to disintegrate. It was not just them. Even the surrounding atmosphere under their feet had started to collapse. However, just then, a cold snort rang out in Yi Ran's mind, completely interrupting this world-overturning attack. At the next moment, all the collapsed matter started to return to its original state. Under a power that was even stronger, more pressurizing, and more domineering than the powers of the world, everything returned to its original state. You want to overturn the world? I'll suppress it with violence. The prince had used his martial will to fend off the reversed powers of the world. Simultaneously, Yi Ran saw to his astonishment that the long halberd in his hand had been stopped at the tip by a fair and tender finger, unable to advance any further. He was unable to unleash any of the power throughout his body at all. He was like a piece of frozen amber, frozen in midair and unable to move at all. The muscles throughout his body kept on moving up and down, and as his essential chi circulated, waves of intense pain came from his meridians and acupuncture points. However, no matter how he struggled, he was unable to break free from the other party's restraints. He looked at the lady before him in great astonishment. It was not because of her appearance that could bring down countries and cities, but because of her exceptional cultivation. How is this possible? How can she possibly be this powerful? I can't even force her to take a single step back? With a light flick of the crown princess fingertip, the crimson-red long halberd turned into ashes. Yi Ran seemed as if he had been struck by lightning. A loud sound rang out from his chest, and he was sent flying back, smashing into the ruins of the divine martial pass. He sent up a huge cloud of dust and shattered rock. Fang Wangshu's body turned into a stream of green smoke and leaped out. Under the prince's intentional control, he did not die from the earlier attack. He quickly ran toward Yi Ran's location and saw Yi Ran, who seemed to have turned into a broken cloth bag. To think that you managed to unleash the powers of a Tier 6 divine level expert with your cultivation at Tier 5 of the divine level by gathering everyone's powers. The martial arts in this world of yours still have some good points. As the prince spoke, she slowly landed before Yi Ran and Fang Wangshu. Yi Ran's breathing became increasingly rapid, as if his life had reached its final moments. He stared at the prince and said clearly, "Was that your full power earlier?" "Full power." The prince threw a glance at Yi Ran, who was on the verge of death, and said calmly, "Not even 10% of my power." A hint of despair flashed in Yi Ran's eyes. He understood that his adoptive father no longer had a chance. He then lost his last breath with an intense reluctance. The crown princess shook her head. She had thought that the other party could be nurtured and wanted to subdue him. However, after interacting with him for a while, she understood that he was not the kind of person who would surrender. Therefore, she did not save him. Fang Wangshu looked at everything before him in a daze. His eyes were filled with confusion. However, the crown princess was not in a hurry to leave. She ordered the imperial guards behind her to clean up the place. At the same time, she spread out the news of the divine martial pass, and then set up camp here. The prince was in no hurry to leave. She ordered the forbidden army behind her to clear up the place and spread the news of the divine martial pass. Then they set up camp here. It could be said that this battle between the great Jin dynasty's imperial court and Prince Xian had received the attention of countless people and influences in the world. It was because whether or not Prince Xian would be able to occupy Jing region in one go and seize the rich resources and righteousness would affect the world's future. It was just as she had thought. On that very night, several tens of groups of people paced around several thousand meters away from the divine martial pass. When they saw the pass that had been turned into ruins and the royal flag that was raised high up, all of them quickly retreated. However, no one had expected that the great Jin dynasty's imperial court, which had been extremely weak and thought to be done for, would seem to have been reborn from the ashes. They defeated the 50,000 troops at the divine martial pass, the two strong armies under Prince Xian, and the top general, Yi Ran. This news spread out like a typhoon, and in the next month, everyone knew about it. Be it the people from Li region who were near Jing region, be it Prince Ding, Prince En, Prince Yi, or many other members of the great Jin dynasty's imperial court who were eager to make a move, they were all astonished by this news. Even the revolutionary army in the south hastened their battle strategy after hearing this. Of course, in comparison, the various major influences in Serene region were even more agitated by this news. Countless clans, officials, and generals who had just joined Prince Xian's side started to hesitate again. The prince did not stay in the divine martial pass for too long. After stationing herself there for 7 days and ensuring that there was sufficient time for the news to be spread out, she moved another 10,000 troops over and slowly headed toward the nearest county in Serene region. With the prince personally leading the troops, the divine martial pass being breached, and the example of Yi Ran dying in battle, as well as Fang Wangshu persuading them to surrender, the resistance that the prince encountered was almost negligible. Even after Prince Xian received the news, he gave the order to retract his forces and gather all the troops in Serene region's capital, Qing City. There were over 200,000 troops under Prince Xian's command, as well as several tens of thousands of soldiers who had just been recruited in Serene region. A total of 250,000 soldiers were gathered together. As for the other counties, he had clearly given up on them. Many people understood that Prince Xian was going to gather all his powers to fight a battle to the death with the prince. With that, wherever the prince led the army to pass by, there were no signs of resistance at all. Within a short 1 month, the entire Serene region was taken over, and the several thousand soldiers were scattered across these counties by the prince to assist in his rule. After the prince went one round around the entire Serene region, she finally led the remaining 5,000 troops and arrived at Serene region's capital, Qing City. With the arrival of the imperial court's army, the entire Qing city was in a state of apprehension. Prince Xian sat in his study. Right now, his countenance was haggard, and there were faint traces of blood in his eyes. He no longer had his past elegance. At this moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. At the sight of the 3 figures, a hint of surprise flashed in Prince Xian's eyes. Everyone is finally here. After receiving the news that Yi Ran, the Abyss Tiger, and Steel Formation had been easily wiped out, Prince Xian understood that even though he had an army of 250,000 soldiers, he did not have the confidence to win. After all, Yi Ran was the #1 general under him, and the Abyss Tiger and Steel Formation were his strongest troops. The Disha realm experts among them were the fruits of his hard work over several decades. If they were defeated, then the 250,000 soldiers under him would not be able to hold on for long either. Therefore, he had been waiting for the 3 mountains 4 peaks to support him. Prince Xian said anxiously, "The entire imperial court has probably been controlled by the demon sect. Right now, this group of demonic people from the demon sect is making a comeback, and it concerns the safety of the world." One of the 3 figures stopped him from continuing and said calmly, "Stop adding fuel to the fire. They aren't from the demon sect at all." "Not from the demon sect." Prince Xian was stunned for a moment before saying, then, "Who is that Marie? Isn't she the illusory emotions path's Zhao Yinglan?" "They're much more amazing than the demon sect," that figure said calmly. "All right, let's not talk about this for now. Let's wait for that person to come." "That person?" Prince Xian's gaze narrowed slightly. To him, the 3 people before him were already characters with extremely high statuses in the 3 mountains 4 peaks. What kind of important character would the person whom even they had to wait for be? Chapter 1034. Several thousand meters away from Qing City, the 5,000 soldiers of the Forbidden Army had set up many simple tents. With Prince's spatial translocation ability, they did not need to bring along any logistics troop. There was also no need to worry about food, clothing, and the like. In the center of the military camp, a magnificent palace stood in the air. This was naturally something that Prince had casually created with her own cultivation. With her martial arts cultivation, it was a piece of cake for her to mold soil into stone and casually build some tall buildings, let alone a small palace. In the small palace, Prince lay on her side on the bed, propping up her head with one hand and wearing a lazy expression. She was wearing a thin pink veil, and the important parts of her body were covered. However, the remaining parts of her arms, thighs, and collarbone were exposed as the light breeze blew and the veil fluttered. Her pupils kept on moving, and her body trembled slightly. This was a habit she had when she was thinking with all her might. Right now, she was thinking about the infiltrating void sword technique that Fang Xinjian had imparted to her. This set of sword technique is really extraordinary, Prince thought, but it's still not enough. Not only do I have to learn his sword technique, but I also have to break it. I have to think of a way to break the seal. Naturally, Prince had never given up on breaking the seal and breaking free from Fang Xinjian's control. At the thought of what Fang Xinjian had done, she was so angry that her face turned a little red. However, she also knew that such things could not be rushed. Just like how they were exchanging martial arts now, they would definitely not hand over their most powerful techniques easily. They would still need to slowly probe and fight. A swooshing sound rang out in the air, and at the next moment, the ground seemed to have been slashed by an invisible sharp blade, revealing several hundred cross-shaped marks. It was the infiltrating void sword intent. I've completely grasped the infiltrating void sword technique. Today should be the day to exchange for the second set of martial arts, right? Just then, Prince's brows twitched as she looked in the direction of the palace's entrance. A young man dressed in white had unknowingly appeared there. The young man had sword-like brows, bright eyes, and a jade-like complexion. He had a disposition like that of an immortal who had descended into the mortal world. He looked at the prince, who was looking at him, and smiled. "Miss Ma, the night is long and I can't sleep. I didn't expect that you couldn't sleep either." Courting death. Prince threw a cold glance at the other party, and the infiltrating void sword intent gushed out. It glided along space, slashing out toward the other party while ignoring all obstructions. Invisible and formless, the white-robed young man laughed softly when faced with this sword attack that was at the pinnacle of sword arts. It was as if he knew how powerful the crown princess was. He did not take the attack head-on. Instead, he moved like a phantom and appeared beside the crown princess. The prince was slightly astonished. He had not expected that the other party would be able to sense the existence of the infiltrating void sword and even be able to dodge this divine sword which transmitted through space. However, she still didn't take it to heart. She raised an eyebrow, and the eerie sword intent circled around the young man in white again. "Hee, why is Sister Fairy so hostile towards me? The moon is high in the sky, and it's lonely and sleepless. Sister, why don't you have a good chat with me and achieve the great harmony of life?" The young man's frivolous voice rang out next to the prince's ears. At the next moment, the infiltrating void sword intent trembled slightly and was absorbed into the acupuncture points all over the young man's body. At the sight of this scene, the prince was also surprised. He stared at the young man in white and asked, "What martial art is this?" The myriad swords returning to the sect. The young man laughed and said, "I'm Shaoshin. I've rushed to the serene region this time around because I heard that an unrivaled beauty has appeared here. Now that I've met you, it's true that your reputation doesn't live up to your reputation. Sister, you're really like a fairy from the heavens." Although the prince's martial arts level was something that Shaoshin had never seen before in his life, there was still a hint of pride and confidence in his eyes. It was not just because he had reached the Tiangang realm at such a young age. It was also because he was a heaven-blessed cultivator, the future leader of the orthodox sects that the Three Mountains' Four Peaks had fully nurtured. The prince's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the young man who spoke in a frivolous manner. There seemed to be killing intent surging in his eyes. Without another word, the prince made his move once again. This time around, his prowess was overwhelming. With Shaoshin as the center, densely packed infiltrating void sword intents spread out slowly within a range of 1,000 meters. Under the pressure from the terrifying powers, the entire space appeared to be in a chaotic and distorted state. Although he had just grasped it not long ago, under the sea of swords that the prince had pushed forth with pure brute force, even a Tier 6 divine-level expert would probably have no choice but to retreat. However, faced with the myriad of sword intents, Shaoshin let out a soft laugh. This move is called Sword 23. As Shaoshin introduced it, the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese in his body gushed out abruptly, seeming to connect with the entire world. At this moment, Shaoshin seemed to have turned into a part of the world. The entire world seemed to tremble slightly, and at the next moment, space was sliced up time and time again until it was sliced into particles that could not be seen by the naked eye. The flowing clouds in the sky condensed into a stretch, and the royal flag that was blown by the night wind seemed to have been frozen, not moving at all. Everyone, including the soldiers from the Forbidden Army, discovered to their astonishment that they were no longer able to move at all. Even the prince could only stand there without moving, looking at Shaoshin in astonishment. To think that the space that was originally one has been sliced up? How did he do it? No, this isn't his martial arts. He's using his will to move this world. The space was instantly sliced up into countless pieces, and the connection between each piece was temporarily severed. From a macroscopic perspective, it created a scene where everything in the world came to a standstill, unable to move. Regardless of whether it was the flowing clouds, the breeze, essential cheese, or even the prince's martial will, all of them came to a standstill with Shaoshin's thoughts. each of them curled up in the smallest spatial fragment. If they wished to move, they would have to use their powers to break through the spatial fragment. However, the prince could sense that she was not fighting against the young man before her. Instead, she was fighting against the entire world. But so what if there was the world? After sensing the restraints on her body, the prince did not choose to give up. Instead, she chose to put up the most intense resistance. Her thoughts were not restricted, and her martial will was still under her control. Therefore, terrifying powers kept on struggling in the prince's body. Within each spatial fragment, violent martial will was seething intensely, as if wanting to break through the restraints placed on her by this world. As if sensing the prince's struggle, Xiao Shen slowly walked up to her, moved close to the prince's ear, and said like a lover's whisper, "It's useless. Sword 23 controls the world with the heart sword and slashes spacetime. Even if you're 10 times stronger, you won't be able to break free." Chapter 1035. The prince merely glared at him, but the martial will in her body grew increasingly violent. It was like a huge dragon that was about to awaken. Xiao Shen seemed as if he had not noticed anything. He looked at the crown princess' beautiful face, and his eyes revealed endless admiration, as well as blatant possessiveness. It was not that there were no beautiful women, but it was Xiao Shen's first time encountering one who was beautiful and as strong as the prince. This caused a feeling of admiration that he had never felt before to gush out from his heart. He couldn't help but raise his hand and touch the other's cheek. However, before he could get close, he was stopped by an invisible force. Xiao Shen smiled. "You're really cautious." The surface of the prince's body had been encompassed by her martial will. Even though her powers had stopped, they were still like layers of protection, protecting her and making it hard for Xiao Shen to get close. Xiao Shen shook his head. "Unless you're a heaven-blessed cultivator, it's impossible to break out of your current confinement. Even if you're 1,000 or 10,000 times stronger than me, it's useless. This is the difference between our realms. Give up." The prince did not say anything, but the intensity of the struggles in the spatial fragments grew increasingly greater. Her martial will seemed to have turned into tempestuous waves. As they undulated, it was as if they wanted to completely destroy the many spatial fragments. A hint of surprise flashed in Xiao Shen's eyes. "What great power! But it's still useless." He shook his head and continued, "With our talent, who in this world will belong to? What's the point of trying to conquer the world? Don't you think that pursuing the profoundness of the human body, exploring the endless universe, and experiencing the great harmony of life is the true pursuit? If Sister Fairy is willing to give up on the imperial court, I'm willing to accompany you and exchange martial arts with you. We'll pursue the vast heavenly Tao together and stop caring about the worldly matters. We'll be a pair of immortal companions." Xiao Shen's gaze was sincere and fervent. There seemed to be great admiration in his eyes as he looked at the prince. It was as if he was looking at the most exquisite piece of art in the world. Looking at Xiao Shen's gaze, the prince seemed to be smiling coldly. However, the fury in the depths of her gaze grew increasingly stronger. What the prince hated the most in his life was being teased by a man, not to mention a brat who was still wet behind the ears. She said coldly, "In a moment, I will let you have a good taste of what is called the great harmony of life." Xiao Shen shook his head and was about to continue persuading her when his countenance suddenly changed. "That's not right. You've been hit by sword 23. How can you speak?" At the next moment, the prince's entire body trembled slightly. Streams of golden light emerged from her body, and the entire world seemed to start shaking. It was not a simple earthquake or hurricane. Instead, the entire space within a radius of 100 miles was shaking as a whole. Streaks of golden light pierced the sky, as if they were going to pierce through the entire world. Once Xiao Shen performed his sword 23, he would be able to confine his enemies in all the space with just a thought. Even a Heavenly Dipper realm expert would be like a fly or a mosquito in front of this move, easily crushed by him. But now that the prince was tied up, how could he be a fly or a mosquito? Xiao Shun felt as if he was restraining the legendary giant who created the world. Ah! An enraged bellow rang out from the prince's body, and piercing golden light burst out from her eyes and mouth. The atmosphere exploded, and the world trembled. Strong gales blew out in all directions with her body as the center, and crackling sounds rang out from many spatial fragments. What kind of joke is this? Xiao Shun looked at this scene in astonishment. The other party's powers had reached an unfathomable level, surpassing all the experts he had encountered before. He even suspected that even great Dao realm experts would not be able to reach such a level in terms of their powers. Violent powers were released incessantly from the prince's body, and even the space in the world was pushed back continuously. Each spatial fragment seemed to have exploded from the pressure, and they were forcefully pressed back together. Just like that, the separated space was pressed back together once again, allowing her to regain her mobility. The prince's entire body was encompassed by golden flames, and a suffocating pressure came from her body, causing the surrounding 5,000 soldiers from the Forbidden Army to faint. Fury seemed to have materialized, burning incessantly in her eyes as she looked at Xiao Shun. "How do you want to die?" Xiao Shun's countenance turned pale abruptly, and he looked at the prince as if he was looking at a ghost. "How is that possible? Other than heaven-blessed cultivators, how can there be anyone who can break free from these restraints?" Under this extremely focused state, the time and the surroundings seemed to have slowed down to Xiao Shun. However, he could only faintly see that the prince's right hand seemed to have moved a little, but it also seemed like it had not moved. At the next moment, a stream of golden light exploded, and the royal heavenly great palm imprint was slapped out. Violent powers instantly encompassed a range of 100 lis. With this furious attack, the prince's powers were truly unleashed. The ground within a range of 100 lis instantly sank and collapsed, turning into a huge palm imprint. Qing City's city walls collapsed in the distance, and the atmosphere turned into countless strong gales that swept out, causing sand and rocks to fly in the world. This was merely the weakest repercussive wave of power. At the spot where the prince's attack was aimed at, Xiao Shun's figure had already turned into nothingness. The space was like a net that was compressed to an extreme by the power of this attack. It mixed together with light and shadows, turning into a state of chaos. With a single move, Xiao Shun seemed to have been turned into dust. Several thousand meters away, Xiao Shun turned into a stream of lightning and cut across the sky. His countenance was already pale, and his mind was blank. Only that palm attack from earlier from the prince kept on replaying in his mind. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! There's really someone who can be so powerful to such an extent? He broke through the 23 swords with brute force? If it wasn't because I still have the 7 imperishable realms, I would have really died earlier. At this moment, Xiao Shun understood one thing deeply. The opponent he was facing was a monster that had surpassed the norm. It was a monster whose powers had broken through to another dimension. An opponent like this is no longer someone I can deal with. I must find someone else. Just as Xiao Shun was fleeing crazily, the prince threw an indifferent glance at the surrounding tents. She left behind a clone with 10% of her powers while the remaining 90% darted out abruptly, shooting up into the sky. Golden light burst out from her eyes as if sweeping through the entire world. Simultaneously, the sudden inspiration was activated at full power. Will you be able to escape? At the instant the prince activated the sudden inspiration, Xiao Shun, who was in the distance, seemed as if he had been struck by lightning. At this moment, he had the feeling that although the world was huge, it was hard for him to hide. He did not know how the prince had found him, nor did he know how she would attack him. Neither did he know when the attack would come. However, the warning signs in his heart kept on pounding crazily. It was as if the entire world was telling him and warning him that he was going to die. Under this extreme sense of danger, under the pressure of the Crown Princess' life and death, Fang Xinjian's speed continued to increase, becoming faster and faster. In the end, as if he had broken through some kind of limit, a sense of comprehension suddenly appeared in Xiao Shun's heart. It was a sense of comprehension toward space-time, the world, and nature. Under the heavy pressure of the layers of danger, he had actually achieved the breakthrough that he had been dreaming of. Haha, I knew it. I'm a heaven-blessed cultivator. I'm destined to be someone. I won't die. With a soft bellow, Xiao Shun struck out a punch. The void space before him seemed to have encountered the Emperor's subjects, making way for him. A strange change occurred. The space was like a peeling wallpaper, continuously shattering and falling until a stretch of pitch-black void space was revealed. This was clearly a punch that could shatter void space. Then with a dash, Xiao Shun stepped into it and disappeared. Almost at the same instant Xiao Shun disappeared, an extremely powerful palm force arrived across the air. A terrifying explosion took place in the sky, and the dazzling golden light seemed to be visible even in the divine capital. Countless mountain ranges on the ground collapsed, and trees were blown into the sky by the strong gales. The prince threw a glance at the void space before him and activated the sudden inspiration once again. However, this time around, she was unable to sense the other party's existence. Damn it! The prince's eyes narrowed, and the fury in her heart was still burning fiercely. With her esteemed status, how could she tolerate being teased by a young lad? At the thought of young lads, the prince could not help but think of Fang Xinjian. At the thought of Fang Xinjian, the fury in her heart grew even stronger. I'm so angry. Then, Fang Xinjian was no match for him, and the man from earlier had escaped. There was naturally a need for her fury to be vented. Some women liked to shop when they were angry, some liked to eat delicacies when they were angry, and some liked to watch television when they were angry. The prince was clearly not an ordinary woman. Once she was angry, she would want to kill someone. Therefore, with a flash of golden light, she disappeared from midair. Right now, in Qing City, the prowess of the battle between the prince and Xiao Shun had alarmed several million people in the city. Prince Xian looked at the Forbidden Army's tent that was in a state of chaos in the distance and cried out, "Did young hero Xiao do it?" He then looked at Qing City, where the terrain had changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with even more astonishment. The martial arts of these two people are like gods and demons. To think that there's a prowess that can change the world when they exchange blows. Standing next to Prince Xian were the three people from the 3 mountains 4 peaks who had come to look for him earlier. All 3 of them were old men with white hair and beards. However, their figures were tall and straight, and their auras were deep. They had the air of sages. The skinny old man in the lead stroked his beard. Junior martial brother Zhao's martial arts have reached an unbelievable realm. He's just a step away from the legendary Great Dao realm. His victory is just a matter of time. A short and fat old man gathered gang cheese into his eyes, looked toward the camp in the distance, and said, "He should have succeeded. All 5,000 of the enemy's soldiers have been knocked unconscious." Chapter 1036. Hearing their judgment, Prince Xian revealed a hint of joy on his face. However, there was a deep wariness in his eyes. Such a heavenly dipper sovereign is too great of a threat. Ordinary armies can't do anything to them. I'm afraid that only an army of 500,000 or more can surround them and directly suppress them with their aura. No wonder the former emperors of the state of Jin are so wary of the 3 mountains 4 peaks. If it's a flourishing dynasty with 1,000,000 soldiers and several thousand Disher realm experts, these Tiangang realm experts would naturally be able to suppress them. But once we enter a chaotic world, these Tiangang experts and sects in the pugilistic world will become an unstable factor that will stir up trouble. Although Xiao Shen had helped Prince Xian deal with his opponent this time around, this made Prince Xian increasingly wary of these pugilistic world experts. He thought about how, if he were to successfully unify the world, he would definitely train his troops, nurture an army of cultivators, and strive to wipe out these Tiangang realm experts. Compared to the demon sect, the Three Mountains Four Peaks have occupied the Middle-earth for centuries. The strength they have accumulated is even more terrifying. Through this period of contact, Prince Xian had an increasing understanding of how unfathomable the Three Mountains Four Peaks were. Compared to the 7 Tiangang realm experts that the demon sect had on the surface, the Three Mountains Four Peaks were much stronger. At the very least, based on what Prince Xian knew, the Three Mountains Four Peaks had at least 10 Tiangang realm experts. For example, the 3 old men in front of him were all Heavenly Dipper realm experts. It was precisely because of their accumulation that they were able to interfere with the situation of the world. There was also Xiao Shen. His performance in this battle made Prince Xian secretly shocked. The thin old man from the Three Mountains Four Peaks nodded and said, "Your Highness Prince Xian, you can send people to clean up the battlefield. We'll be staying by your side to protect you when we recover the serene region and attack the divine capital." The other short and fat old man laughed and said, "Don't worry, with the 3 of us protecting you, there aren't many people in this world who can hurt you." Prince Xian smiled as well. "Thank you, immortal seniors. After I take over the divine capital, I'll definitely treat you with the respect of the imperial preceptor. From now on, the Three Mountains Four Peaks will be the national religion of Great Jin." When the 3 of them heard this, they exchanged glances with each other and revealed a trace of satisfaction in their eyes. Prince Xian asked again, "I wonder how Marie will be dealt with?" During this period of time, Prince Xian had been gathering information to understand this female general who had beaten him up to the point where he was unable to retaliate. It was said that not only was her martial arts cultivation deep and unfathomable, but she was also a devastatingly beautiful woman. She was much more outstanding than the female disciples of the illusory emotions path. Therefore, Prince Xian also wanted to take a look. However, the thin old man immediately said with a serious expression, "Miss Marie is someone that junior brother Xiao thinks highly of. I'm afraid that she has already returned to the mountain with junior brother to discuss the Tao and concentrate on cultivation. Your Highness, it's best that you don't ask about it." The short and fat old man put it more bluntly, "Your Highness Prince Xian, although junior martial brother Xiao has outstanding talent, he's still a young man after all. He won't allow anyone to have any improper thoughts toward the girl he has taken a liking to. Your Highness, please do not make a mistake." Hearing this, Prince Xian almost exploded from anger. He was a descendant of the royal family and a hero. When had he ever been lectured like this? However, at the thought of Xiao Shen's skills, the Three Mountains Four Peaks Foundation, and the strength of the 3 people before him, he forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart. The corners of his lips curled up into a hint of an awkward smile as he said, "I've been rash." Seeing his respectful and submissive appearance, the 3 old men secretly nodded and broke into satisfied smiles. To the Three Mountains Four Peaks, it was not important who the emperor was. What was important was whether the new emperor was obedient enough and how his attitude toward the Three Mountains Four Peaks was. However, just then, a stream of light that was like thunderbolts and lightning flashed before everyone. It was a golden figure that descended from the sky within 0.001 seconds. Long air currents were dragged into the world, and sound waves radiated out. It was as if a myriad of thunderbolts had exploded at the same time, or as if a bolt of lightning had struck down into the mortal world from beyond the 9 heavens. Before the short and fat old man, who was still maintaining his smile, could react, the figure had already descended on his head at an extremely fast speed. Concurrently, a fair and tender palm pressed down slowly on his head. Everything happened at an extremely fast speed. When the palm that descended from beyond the 9 heavens came into contact with the short and fat old man's head, a power that was comparable to the impact of an asteroid penetrated through his entire body mercilessly. If the scene was slowed down 10,000 times, one would be able to see that the old man's head was like a can that had been crushed. It was twisted, sunk in, shattered, and eventually turned into a pile of meat paste that was compressed into his chest by that violent power. Then his chest shattered, and his flesh and blood kept on pressing down explosively. The short and fat old man seemed to have instantly turned into a flattened lump of flesh and blood, pressed down onto the surface by an invisible power. Therefore, the surface of the ground started to shatter. It was as if the ground was being torn apart and pierced through by waves of invisible power. A huge black hole kept on expanding with the short and fat old man's body as the corpse. Countless rocks and sand soared into the sky, and the atmosphere was compressed into colorful plasma shock waves that spread out in all directions. Everything happened within this 0.001 second. By the time the other 2 old men and Prince Xian reacted, their vision had already been encompassed by endless light and heat. 2 auras burst out from the 2 old men at the same time, and the aura of the Heavenly Dipper realm experts instantly connected into one, protecting the 3 people and withstanding the oncoming plasma shock wave, as well as countless gravel and sand that were like bullets bouncing over. It was only after an entire minute that the shock waves and tremors slowly dissipated. Looking at the smoke and dust that filled up the sky, the thin old man swung his right hand, and an invisible air current extended out, blowing away all the smoke and dust. The area within a range of several thousand meters had turned into barren land, and a huge crater had appeared before them. Even though the prince had used his spatial translocation power to negate 99% of the impact at the last moment, this attack of his had still caused a terrifying amount of damage. Right now, she had changed into a set of lightweight black training clothes, revealing her arms and calves. She stood barefooted on the ground as she rubbed her small, delicate fists. She exhaled a mouthful of white air. The pleasure of having her fists land on flesh had finally allowed her to vent her frustrations. As for the short and fat old man who had been struck by her, his body and spirit had been destroyed. The other 3 people looked at the prince as if they were facing a great enemy. The thin old man said in surprise and bewilderment, "Marie? Why are you here? Where's Junior Marshal Brother Xiao?" He was not the only one. Everyone was stunned by the scene before their eyes and the Crown Prince's earth-shattering attack. It was because they realized that if they had been the target of that attack earlier, none of them would have been able to survive. The enemy was far stronger than they had imagined. Chapter 1037. That trash? He's escaped. Prince raised his eyelids, clenched his fists nonchalantly and said, "The 3 mountains 4 peaks, right? Don't worry. I'll look for them one by one. Run." Regardless of whether it was Prince's performance in instantly killing his companion or the fact that he had appeared here while Xiao Shun was nowhere to be found, all of these indicated one thing. The other party's strength far surpassed their estimations. Even though these 2 old men were top-notch experts from the 3 mountains 4 peaks and were Tiangang realm characters, they did not have the slightest confidence that they would be able to win. Almost at the instant Prince appeared, they had already made this judgment. Therefore, with an explosive bellow, the thin old man's entire body surged with gang cheese, gushing out toward Prince with an overwhelming force. On the other side, the bald old man grabbed Prince Xian and shot out at lightning speed, fleeing. There was no need for communication or hint. Almost at the instant they took action, the 2 of them had already divided up the work. One was to delay and the other was to flee. This was the tacit understanding and experience they had nurtured through countless battles to the death over several decades. As the thin old man slapped out with his palm, gang cheese gushed out violently, pressing out toward Prince like a tsunami. There seemed to be faint sounds of waves ringing out in the world. This move, toppling mountains and overturning seas, was created by observing the sun and moon, the tides and great seas and tsunamis. It used gang cheese to imitate the seas, and when the palm slapped out, layers of gang cheese would stack up and the power would explode continuously, having the prowess to overturn rivers and seas. The thin old man had once crushed an entire county into dust with a single palm strike. The power of his palm was very powerful and was rarely seen in the world. Moreover, as the gang cheese increased, the prowess of this move kept on rising. It was almost limitless. Right now, it had been 20 years since the thin old man performed this move, and its prowess was limitless. However, when faced with the gang cheese sea that could crush a city and penetrate an army of several 10,000 people, Prince struck out a punch head-on. With an explosive rumble, white air currents gushed out with Prince's fist as the center. Violent physical strength smashed onto the gang cheese sea without any reservations. Then, under the astonished gaze of the thin old man, the earth-shattering aura came to an abrupt halt, as if a large truck had crashed into an aircraft carrier at full speed. The pause only lasted for a split second. In the next instant, the ocean of stellar energy suddenly surged back, as if the ocean had been struck by the punch, and it surged back toward the thin old man. Prince Xian, who was being dragged away at rapid speed, watched as the thin old man was drowned by endless air currents, and his body disappeared completely. Then, under his horrified gaze, that graceful figure was like a bolt of lightning. She took a step forward, and the ground beneath her feet split apart. Countless rocks rushed out of the ground. Prince had already arrived before Prince Xian, and his fist smashed into the bald old man's chest. Even his screams were stuffed back into his mouth by the wind pressure from the fist. In the next moment, the bald old man exploded into a bloody froth that filled the air. Prince Xian was sent flying at extreme speed. After being splattered all over with blood, he rolled onto the ground, smashing through a few buildings, and then fell into a stretch of ruins. As for the blood that had splattered toward Prince, it was sent flying by the strong wind before it could even get close. The crown princess rubbed her wrist. After consecutively killing three Mountains 4 Peaks experts, she immediately felt much better. Although she could use the royal heavenly great palm imprint to slap them to death, it was still more satisfying to kill them with a punch and a kick. Crashing sounds rang out, and Prince Xian pushed away the debris on his body. He saw that the crown princess had already walked up to him, one step at a time. The shouts of countless soldiers and horses rang out in the distance, as well as the sounds of soldiers running. The 250,000-man army in the city had long since woken up, and countless people were running toward them. However, even though their numbers far surpassed the other parties, Prince Xian did not feel any sense of security even though the over 200,000-man army was not far away from him. It was all because of this young lady who was like a ghost. At the thought of how she had killed 3 Tiangang realm experts within a few breaths' time, Prince Xian felt an extreme sense of terror. The feeling that his life was not in his hands caused his countenance to turn extremely grim. With a p sound, Prince ignored Prince Xian's reaction and had no interest in seeing him beg for mercy, resist, or curse. Prince had already tapped Prince Xian's head with a finger. She then looked toward the 250,000-man army in the city that was gradually seething. The corners of Prince's lips curled up into a hint of a savage smile. At the next moment, she was like a cannonball, heading toward the center of the crowd. Boom! The news of the decisive battle in Qing City spread throughout the world like a typhoon. After this battle, Prince's reputation soared like the sun in the sky. Everyone knew that the imperial court had an unrivaled female general. With the recapture of the Jing region and Serene region, the Beiyuan region was without a leader, and the imperial court was about to take over the 3 regions. Clearly, they would once again reach the pinnacle very soon. With Prince's existence, the imperial court had clearly become the strongest influence in the world. No one had expected that the great Jin dynasty, which had been extremely weak earlier on, would once again show signs of resurgence. Unknowingly, all the influences in the world stopped what they were doing. Although the three regions in the south were under the control of Prince Ding, Prince N, and Prince E, they had stopped their restless actions. They kept sending envoys to each other, showing signs of joining forces. In the 6 regions of the Central Plains, the 18 feudal vassals who had been fighting against each other had unknowingly stopped and turned their gazes in the direction of the divine capital. There were many rebel armies in the coastal Min region. However, during the period when the imperial court was subduing Serene region, they were completely unified by the world's #1 rebel, Liang Bo. He had an army of 500,000 men under him and called himself the Red Scarf Army, facing off against the 18 feudal vassals in the Central Plains across the river. Although Liang Bo claimed to have an army of 500,000 men under him, compared to the elites under Prince Xin, who had been fighting in the plains all year round, their quality was much lower. Their abilities were also not uniform, and there were even many soldiers who had yet to reach the Xiantian realm. They merely picked up a saber and entered the battlefield. However, regardless of whether it was the 3 princes in the south, the 18 feudal vassals in the Central Plains, or the leader of the uprising in Min region, none of them dared to act recklessly. They could only recuperate and accumulate their strength. Some people saw that the great Jin dynasty was rising up once again and wanted to wait for the imperial court's enlistment, wanting to join the imperial court once again. However, some people knew that they would be sentenced to death and wanted to rise up and attack, completely crushing the Fang clan's imperial court. However, no one was interested in taking the lead. It was because the imperial court was still in the hands of the righteous cause, and the imperial court was still very strong. Everyone lay low quietly, waiting for an opportunity. In the imperial capital, Fang Xinjian rubbed his forehead, looked at the prince and asked, "Is it over? The Serene region has been completely subdued. Next, I plan to attack the Beiyuan region and take back Prince Xian's old nest." The prince lay on a wooden armchair, raising her long legs high up, wrapped in tightly fitting training pants. Her legs were placed on the tea table next to her. After saying what she planned to do next, she looked at Fang Xinjian and said, "All right, it's the appointed time. Let's change our martial arts." Fang Xinjian nodded, and a stream of sword intent shot out. It suddenly appeared between the prince's brows, coming and going without a trace. Even with the prince's realm, he was unable to sense how it had appeared. Instant sword. The prince absorbed the knowledge in this stream of sword intent, and his eyes revealed astonishment. To think that there's such a sword technique in the world? This sword technique's comprehension of time and space has reached the limits of Tier 6 of the divine level. Coming and going without a trace, coming and going without a trace. The prince threw a glance at Fang Xinjian, revealing a rare hint of admiration. "Your sword arts are really amazing." A hint of pride flashed in the prince's eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he still said, "But I won't take advantage of you." The prince spewed out a stream of golden light, which shot into Fang Xinjian's consciousness. There were countless golden scriptures densely packed together, amounting to several million words. Fang Xinjian instantly scanned through them and understood what this was. Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique? This is the Royal Heavenly Great Art's general principles? His eyes narrowed slightly. He had not expected that the other party would give him such a good thing. If the Royal Heavenly Great Palm imprint was said to be a way of consolidating one's foundation and defending against enemies in the Royal Heavenly Great Art, then this Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique was the core theory of the Royal Heavenly Great Art. It was one of the most essential parts. Not bad. The prince said proudly, "This Son of Heaven's Qi Nurturing Technique is our Ascendant Heavenly Sect's supreme technique, the Royal Heavenly Great Art's basic foundation. Returning your instant sword, you definitely won't lose out." It was true that he wouldn't lose out. At this moment, Fang Xinjian understood that his decision was not wrong. During this period of interaction, Fang Xinjian also understood some parts of the prince's character. The other party was as proud as he had imagined. This was why he had given him the instant sword directly. Moreover, the other party was also as he had expected, not willing to take advantage of him. Therefore, he had given him the essence of the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing technique. Chapter 1038. Several million words of scripture flowed rapidly in Fang Xinjian's mind. At this moment, not only did Fang Xinjian possess a brain that was comparable to that of a supercomputer, but he had also relied on the seal of wisdom to control the rich computing power of two regions. With such a powerful calculation ability, he was able to read through the entire Son of Heaven's Qi fostering technique in an instant. After looking through this ascendant heavenly sect's great martial art, Fang Xinjian also gasped in admiration at its profoundness. The Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing technique was not purely a cultivation technique or martial arts move. Instead, it gathered the essence of the ascendant heavenly sect's cultivation thoughts. It was the comprehension of countless experts toward martial arts and the world. The will of the people was the will of the heavens, and the will of the people was the will of the heavens. This was the core idea of the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing technique. The content was split into three parts: heaven, earth, and human. It described the effects of heaven, earth, and human on the world, the universe beyond the heavens, the earth beneath their feet, and how all living beings changed the world, changed the entire timeline, and changed the trend of the future. The history of the world was a collection of countless changes and trends. Those who could control more resources would be able to change more of the future. Only when heaven, earth, and man worked together could they change the direction of the timeline and change the entire future. The sky was the rotation of the universe, the earth was the changes of the stars under one's feet, and the people were the thoughts of everyone in the world. The ascendant heavenly sect's most important goal was to unify the three and become the sole ruler of the entire timeline, using their own will to change the past, present, and future. Of course, this absolute art was very ambitious, but even the Creator couldn't reach that final step. But even so, it was already very impressive. The various theories, cultivation techniques, and the use of the universe, the earth, the stars, and the will of the people were all things Fang Xinjian had never seen before. Therefore, this cultivation method did not have a fixed cultivation method. Everyone who saw the contents could come up with a completely different cultivation method. First of all, I have to grasp the will of the people. Fang Xinjian slowly deduced the cultivation method of the Son of Heaven's Qi fostering technique. According to the records of the Son of Heaven's Qi nurturing technique, the most convenient position to grasp the will of the people was to be the emperor. Everyone's way of thinking, everyone's goals, everyone's code of conduct, they converged together to form the direction of the entire society's development. But in this process, it was clear that not everyone's thoughts were the same. According to the difference in status and power, the more resources an individual possessed, the more influence his thoughts would have on the development of society. It was just like how an ordinary farmer could only decide on a small matter like farming, while an emperor could shake the world with a single order, or even cause millions of corpses. This was what it meant to say: those who had more resources would be able to control more people's thoughts and the trajectory of their destinies. As a character at the pinnacle of authority, the emperor gathered the wills and destinies of countless people in the world. This formless and intangible power that was almost undetectable yet able to affect all living things was known as Dragon Qi by the ascendant heavenly sect. Dragon Qi was invisible and formless, and even divine-level experts would find it hard to detect it. However, it was omnipresent and even ordinary people would be able to sense it. For example, a single order from the emperor, a single imperial edict, a single glance, could change the entire situation of the world, make experts commit suicide, make armies retreat. Everyone could feel the pressure, and unknowingly, they would be affected by it. It was just like the current situation in the Central Plains. The reason why many powers did not dare to act rashly was partly because of the imperial court's strength, and partly because the imperial court occupied the position of righteousness and the identity of the emperor. Otherwise, the feudal vassals would probably besiege the divine capital. Therefore, although Dragon Chi was invisible and formless, it truly existed. It was an amalgamation of authority, status, the will of the people, and heaven's will. However, most emperors were unable to make use of this power and could only use it through indirect means such as authority, army, policies, and language. The Son of Heaven's Chi nurturing art required one to refine Dragon Chi and strengthen their intrinsic qualities, allowing the hearts of the people in the world to be in their hands and refined into a part of their martial will. With that, each attack would be able to gather the will of all living beings in the world, and even the power of the world's circulation. However, if one wanted to gather Dragon Chi at the beginning, they would still need to use ordinary means to make the world submit to them. This was not difficult for Fang Xinjian. In order to make the people submit to him, it was nothing more than to improve everyone's quality of life. To Fang Xinjian, who came from a modern society and had great martial prowess, this was too easy. I've gained something from the demon sect and need to continue. However, the imperial court needs to manage things here and gather Dragon Chi to cultivate the Son of Heaven's Chi nurturing art. There's no way for us to provide assistance over there. Therefore, the prince was sent to reclaim the lost land in the Beiyuan region, while Fang Xinjian started to truly govern this country. From this day onward, countless aristocrats in the divine capital discovered that the land under their feet had started to undergo all sorts of unbelievable changes. In fact, due to the development of martial arts in Middle-earth, there was no lack of productivity. After all, Xiantian realm experts were equivalent to first transition knights, Disha realm experts were equivalent to second transition knights, and Tiangang realm experts possessed the abilities of Tier 1 of the divine level or above. Moreover, due to the existence of the circulation system of the Tiangang realm and Disha realm, the difficulty of cultivating essential Qi was much lower than that of knights. This caused their numbers to be over 10 times or even 100 times more than the extraordinary humans in Miracle World. Therefore, the scale of the cities in this world, the quality of the buildings, and their resistance against natural disasters far surpassed the standards that a feudal dynasty should have. However, it was also because their productivity came from martial arts that cultivators were more concerned with the increase in their cultivation and wealth instead of using their martial prowess for production. That was something that commoners needed to do. However, Fang Xinjian could use his absolute power to change this. Therefore, the army became a production team, and several 10,000 Xiantian realm and over 100 Disha realm experts became glorious laborers. Each of them was like a human-shaped excavator, carrying out social construction under Fang Xinjian's command. Moreover, Fang Xinjian himself was a monster that had gathered the knowledge and productivity of the entire earth. Very soon, many roads started to appear in the Jing region and the Serene region, and several thousand cars would be sent out from the palace every day. However, this was just the beginning. As Fang Xinjian's time in this world was limited, he chose an even more radical method. He released his virtual image. Invisible and formless, the high-dimensional sword realm that no one could detect encompassed the Jing region and the Serene region, splitting mountains and seas, creating rivers and building roads. Everything was up to Fang Xinjian with a single thought. Waves of formless energy descended like the might of the heavens and earth. The mountain rocks were disintegrated, the river channels were changed, and the ground became flat. Layer after layer of paving materials were teleported over. It was as if an invisible giant hand had covered the ground. Everything happened so naturally, as if the world was revolving around Fang Xinjian's will. Chapter 1039. Within a few days, the basic transportation infrastructure had been completed across the two regions. Just this alone could greatly accelerate the circulation of goods, lower the cost of goods, and improve the quality of life of countless people. Logically speaking, the next step should be education, commerce, health. The voices of countless people rang out in Fang Xinjian's mind. He looked at the Jing region and the serene region that were emitting countless lights in his consciousness, and there seemed to be countless numbers flashing in his eyes. Fang Xinjian could rapidly build the facilities in terms of hardware. However, he was unable to change people's thoughts at a rapid speed. Therefore, he still decided to keep on modifying the basic facilities to increase the people's happiness. He wanted to make the people feel what they wanted and to strengthen his dragon chi. Therefore, I'll first build the sewage system and electricity system. Even Fang Xinjian frowned at the thought of completing the construction of the water and electricity systems in the two regions. I'll take it slow. Just as the Serene region and the Jing region were going through tremendous changes, a storm was raging outside Middle-earth. In the west, in an oasis, flames soared into the sky. Women's cries and men's bellows formed a cruel scene. Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura stood side by side, looking at the massacre in the tribe. The corners of their lips curled up into a cold smile. Heavenly Yiksha, who had recovered from his hunchback, chuckled. He was like an owl in the deep mountains, giving off a feeling of trepidation. He said, "Jean Tiendi, are you going to watch as your tribesmen die one by one?" Before the two of them was a man covered in blood. His body was tied up by many steel rods as he knelt on the ground. He looked at the calamity before him, and tears of blood flowed down from his eyes. Blood River Path, even if I die, I won't hand over the legacy of the Demon Emperor. You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. White Azura shook his head and said, "Bring the person over." A few disciples from the Blood River Path quickly escorted over 10 men and women over. Some of them wore thin muslin, while others wore long white robes. They were the typical attire of the Western region's tribes. However, from their appearances, they seemed to be mixed-blood people from Middle-earth and the Western region. In reality, all of them were the relatives and disciples of the man kneeling before them. They belonged to the Desolate Era Path, one of the 7 paths of the demon sect. They had been living in the Western region for over 100 years. Looking at his wife, children, and disciple, a trace of pain finally flashed in the big man's eyes. A young woman in a black gauze dress knelt on the ground and cried, "Master, Hao is only 7 years old. Please save him. Dad, I don't want to die. Master, save us." The corners of White Azura's lips curled up into a cold smile, and he slowly walked up to a little boy. His pale palm slowly stroked the boy's face, and he said calmly, "A 7-year-old child. Wouldn't it be a pity if he were to die now?" Under the caress of White Azura's palm, the little boy trembled all over, and tears kept on welling up in his eyes. It was clear that he was extremely afraid. Enough. Jean Tiendi glared at White Azura, but his will to fight was almost completely gone. "Let them off. I'll hand over the Demon Emperor's legacy." Jean Tiendi's body trembled slightly, and a piece of flesh in front of his chest suddenly burst open, revealing his beating heart. Above his heart, a metal plate kept on beating along with his heart. It was the Demon Emperor's legacy, which had been passed down from generation to generation by the Desolate Era Path. "To think that you hid it here?" White Azura looked at the Demon Emperor's legacy, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. "It's still not enough," Heavenly Yiksha said coldly. "Eat this." As gang cheese circulated, a green-colored medicinal pill with a foul smell was brought before Jean Tiendi. Now that he had lost his legacy and his entire clan had been captured, Jean Tiendi was already disheartened. When he saw the medicinal pill before him, he ate it without saying a single word. However, even though he did not ask, Heavenly Yiksha still had to explain. "This is the heart-devouring, brain-engulfing pill developed by the Myriad Poison Path. After taking it, goo bugs will hide in your brain. If you don't take the antidote on the 15th of every month, you'll suffer the pain of having your brain slowly devoured by the goo bug. Don't try to use gang cheese to attack them. Before they die, they'll crush your brain. Just as Heavenly Yiksha was explaining, White Azura giggled and stuffed another heart-devouring, brain-engulfing pill into the young boy's mouth. At the sight of this scene, Jean Tiendi's eyes almost popped out of his eye socket. Gang cheese seethed all over his body, and with a furious bellow, he charged out toward White Azura. However, he had just stood up when Heavenly Yiksha pressed down on his head, sending him crashing fiercely toward the yellow sand under his feet. Amidst an explosive boom, air currents rose, and sand soared up into the sky. Jean Tiendi was smashed into the yellow sand, and he was completely suppressed by Heavenly Yiksha. This desolate Arapath's strongest expert, a Tiangang realm expert, was currently unable to put up any resistance before Heavenly Yiksha. One reason for this was because he had suffered serious injuries. The other reason was that Heavenly Yiksha had been strengthened by Blood Sea through the vital energy and blood of several hundred White Bone Path's elite. He could be said to have been reborn, and his martial arts had already reached perfection. Tiangang realm experts who were slightly weaker were no match for him at all. White Azura broke into a satisfied smile as he watched the young boy consume the pill in his hand. Jean Tiendi, I know what you're planning. However, if you harbor any other thoughts, you won't be the only one who'll die. Your son will also die from the pain of having his brain devoured by the bug. The two of them, who had obtained the legacy of the Demon Emperor, no longer had any reservations. They started to squeeze out whatever value they had from each other. After getting someone to bring Jean Tiendi's family away, White Azura's smile grew increasingly brilliant. All right, the desolate Arapath has surrendered. 6 of our sacred sects' 7 paths have gathered, and only the illusory emotions path is left. It's a pity. Heavenly Yiksha let out a sigh. If we had sought out the myriad poison path first, the iron blood path wouldn't have died out in vain. The two of them had been under Blood Sea's orders to attack the demon sect's 7 paths and snatch the legacy of the Demon Emperor. However, when they found their second target, the myriad poison path, they discovered that the other party had developed a miraculous poison called the heart-devouring brain-swallowing pill. This poison was separated into a mother pill and a child pill. After consuming the child pill, the person would need to consume the antidote every month in order to continue living. However, this was only the basic function. The person who had consumed the child pill would be subtly influenced by the goo bugs in their brains. They would develop an increasingly stronger sense of closeness toward the person who had consumed the mother pill. In the end, they would almost treat the other party as the most important master in their life. It could be said to be an unrivaled weapon used to control experts. However, it was very difficult to create. The myriad poison path had spent over 100 years of effort, but they had only managed to create 2 mother pills and 10 child pills. Another reason was that the smell was too strong. That stench was something that could not be concealed no matter what method was used. Therefore, it was impossible to use it as a poison. They could only defeat their opponents and then force them to consume it. Previously, they had been worried that the other party would rather die than submit. Therefore, they had forced the other party to hand over the Demon Emperor's legacy before feeding them the medicine. It was a pity that before they encountered the myriad poison path, they had already wiped out the iron blood path. Despite this, they had successively subdued the myriad poison path, sinister ghost path, and the desolate era path. In addition to the already wiped out white bone path, iron blood path, and their own blood river path, as well as the remaining illusory emotions path, there were now 7 paths in the demon sect. There's nothing to feel pity about. With the 2 of us and the 3 people from the myriad poison path, sinister ghost path, and desolate era path, we have a total of 5 Tiangang realm experts. It's impossible for the illusory emotions path to fend them off. White Azura smiled. Next, we'll just have to fight our way up to the Serene Mountain. Chapter 1040. On a cliff that was over 50 lis away from the Serene Mountain, Fei Li, who was dressed in emerald green clothes, looked at the man in blood-red clothes before her with admiration. This man was the Blood River Path's leader, the heaven-blessed cultivator who had unified the demon sect's 6 paths, Blood Sea. Fei Li looked at this man who was like a god and felt that after coming out of seclusion this time around, his aura had become increasingly unfathomable. It was like the strong gales that were high up in the heavens, giving off a distant feeling as if they would never be able to come into contact with him. Right now, Blood Sea was standing on the cliff. His eyes had turned into a series of crimson vortexes, emitting blood-red glow incessantly like crimson rubies. He looked at the serene mountain that was like a black dragon prostrating on the ground in the distance, and there seemed to be a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Behind the two of them were rows of Blood River Path's disciples. They were half kneeling on the ground, looking at the figure at the very front. There was only admiration in their eyes. After 300 years of separation, the sacred sect's 7 great orthodoxies were finally going to be unified once again in the hands of this man. At the thought of how they would be able to accomplish this world-shaking feat, their eyes were filled with uncontrollable agitation. Their gazes toward Blood Sea were also filled with even more admiration. Just then, an elder came to Blood Sea's side and said softly, "Lord Azura has sent the latest news. The desolate era path has ended. Based on the time, they'll probably be arriving at the agreed location soon." "All right." Blood Sea nodded, and his tone was a little indifferent. It was as if the desolate era path's submission was unable to excite him. Fei Li asked puzzledly, "Lord, do we really need to wait for Heavenly Yiksha and the others to come? With your strength. After all, Zhao Yinglan is the strongest expert in our sacred sect's 7 paths over the past 20 years. Blood Sea's eyes seethed with hints of blood-colored ripples. "I'll naturally have to go all out to deal with her. This is also a form of respect for expert. I only hope that she won't disappoint me." At the next moment, he looked at the young lady and asked, "Fei Li, how's the situation in the Central Plains recently?" Right now, the world was in chaos. Blood Sea wanted to unify the demon sect so that he could make use of the demon sect's power to intervene in this chaotic situation. He even wanted to unify the Central Plains and advance to that supreme position. Fei Li gave it some thought and said, "Ever since the imperial court defeated Prince Xian, they headed north to reclaim their lost lands. The other 18 feudal vassals, the 3 princes in the south, and that traitor Liang Bo are all quietly lying in wait. The smaller groups of rebels don't have the strength to influence the overall situation. Everyone is accumulating their strength, so nothing major has happened. Haha, I didn't expect the imperial court to be able to retaliate in such a situation." The corners of Blood Sea's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. "After I unify the sacred sect, I'll have to take a good look at that legendary female general." Blood Sea was also very interested in this female general, who was said to be as beautiful as a fairy, had defeated Prince Xian, and was even said to have defeated the Tiangang realm experts from the 3 mountains 4 peaks. However, Fei Li revealed a hint of hesitation. Blood Sea seemed to sense her hesitation and said, "Is there anything else? Just say it." Fei Li said with an uncertain tone, "It's said that the great Jin dynasty's young emperor has started a reform, putting in great efforts to build roads, open up mountains, dig rivers, and build bridges. He also keeps on opening up trade routes, developing craftsmen, and setting up academies. He even got the many experts from the Forbidden Army to use their martial arts to carry out construction. I don't know if this is true or not." Hearing Fei Li's words, the corners of Blood Sea's lips curled up, revealing a hint of a sneer. "Fool! Rome wasn't built in a single day. The great Jin dynasty is already riddled with holes at its current state and can't withstand any more setback. If it's me, I'll grant amnesty to the world and recruit all the volunteer armies to surrender, recuperate, and accumulate strength silently. It's true that what he's doing is a good thing, but the timing is wrong. Does he think that he'll be able to sit firmly on the throne with just one great victory? His actions have probably depleted the last bit of the imperial court's vitality. He's really trying to cut himself off from the world. Moreover, soldiers are the foundation of a country. The stronger the cultivator, the more they need to cultivate and maintain their health over a long period of time. Shaking his head, Bloodsea continued. He even mobilized martial arts experts to carry out construction. He's really neglecting the essentials and focusing on trifles. He's digging his own grave for the sake of some insignificant benefits. To think that I treated him as an opponent previously. By the looks of it, he's still young and impetuous, someone with great ambitions but little talent. He then looked toward the serene mountain in the distance, and there seemed to be blood-colored flames burning in his eyes. Wait until I completely unify the sacred sect. Zhao Yinglan sat cross-legged on the serene mountain. Streams of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese swam around her, forming many mysterious rings that emitted a strange suction force. Fu Daoxian, who was at the side, looked at it for a few more seconds and felt as if the essential qi in his body was leaving his body. She immediately lowered her head and asked puzzledly, "Master, are these the martial arts that His Majesty taught you?" Zhao Yinglan nodded, and her eyes gleamed with joy. To think that after His Majesty read through our illusory emotions path's martial arts secret manuals, he was able to gain a comprehensive understanding of them so quickly and even made improvements to them. He's really a rare talent in martial arts. During this period of time, she had only received a little guidance from Fang Xinjian. With Fang Xinjian's ability to see through the essence and see through the microscopic realm, her martial arts cultivation had improved tremendously. Her illusory demonic rotation martial arts had also reached a realm where it was formless and unseen, responding to nature. Each portion of her power could unleash 100% of its effect. Her ability to borrow force to fight back had also gone through an overwhelming qualitative change. "Master," Fu Daoxian asked curiously, "do you think that His Majesty might be the rumored heaven-blessed cultivator?" "Heaven-blessed cultivator?" Zhao Yinglan hesitated for a moment. The legendary heaven-blessed cultivators were all cultivators with extraordinary aptitude. It was not just a matter of their aptitude. It was also said that their martial arts were bestowed by the heavens. Even without anyone's guidance, they would be able to pick up countless amazing techniques. That's possible. Zhao Yinglan also had some doubts. After all, with Fang Xian's age, it seemed that he could only be a heaven-blessed cultivator for him to have reached this realm. She looked in the direction of the mountain's peak, and a hint of awe flashed in her eyes. Fang Xian seemed to have gained some comprehension toward the Demon Emperor's legacy. 3 days ago, he had announced that he would be going into seclusion, forbidding anyone from getting close to the mountain's peak. "All right, don't talk about His Majesty behind his back," Zhao Yinglan said, patting Fu Daoxian's head. "Come, Xian spar with Master. I'll pass on His Majesty's improvements to you. In the future, the Imperial Court will be in need of manpower. Whether or not you can stand out will depend on yourself." This disciple obeys. Fu Daoxian nodded. At the next moment, he circulated his martial arts and flew out lightly. His long sleeves drifted toward Fang Xian like flowing clouds. Chapter 1041. On the other side, before Fang Xinjian, the fragment that was neither gold nor silver spun, emitting a mysterious dim light. There seemed to be countless words floating out, disappearing into the surrounding void. During this period of time, Fang Xinjian had made use of his understanding of the demon sect's martial arts, the records of the demon sect's history, the royal family's manuals as a reference, as well as the memories of countless commoners gathered in the two regions. Fang Xinjian finally managed to slowly decipher a portion of the profoundness of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Rather than saying that the Demon Emperor's legacy was a martial art, it would be better to say that it was a password. The Great Tao's Testimony. This is the true name of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Fang Xinjian's thoughts were extremely clear. From the Disha realm onward, the cultivators in this world will be slowly assimilated by the Disha Qis. After reaching the Tiangang realm, they will be transformed by the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. What they obtain isn't true power but the authority to control the world's powers. Fang Xinjian grabbed out casually and grabbed the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. Clearly, the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis in this world are all alive. The cultivator's cultivation is to control them step by step, and through this process, they will keep on strengthening themselves. In the end, after they die, they will return to the world and return to the cycle of the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis. And the Great Tao's Testimony. Fang Xinjian sensed the information contained in the fragment. It seemed to be a path that led straight to the heavens. This is the crux to stepping into the Great Tao realm. It doesn't matter if it's recorded in the fragment or in some other medium. The crux is the information contained in it. Before the Demon Emperor died, he passed down the authority he grasped, hoping that his descendants would be able to grasp it. It's a pity that not everyone has the aptitude. Fang Xinjian stroked his chin. Or rather, ordinary people won't be able to grasp it at all. To be able to grasp the Great Tao's testimony seems to require some kind of special ability. Right now, Fang Xinjian could be said to have discovered the lock on the door. However, he was unable to find the location of the key. But if that's the case, where did the Great Tao's testimony come from? Fang Xinjian sensed the information from the Great Tao's testimony, but every time he tried to summon it and use its authority, he would be rejected. It was as if he had entered the password over and over again, but all of them were wrong. Since it doesn't work, I'll just have to use brute force. Fang Xinjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and there seemed to be streams of sword light flashing in them. At the next moment, the power of the high-dimensional sword realm entered the three-dimensional world and slashed at the source of its essence, following the guidance of the Great Tao's testimony. It was as if he didn't need to enter the password and directly attacked the other party's server. At the next moment, a massive human figure that seemed to be able to penetrate through the heavens and earth appeared in Fang Xinjian's senses. Even a hint of astonishment appeared on his face. The surroundings where Fang Xinjian was cultivating in seclusion were all blocked off by layers of guards set up by the illusory emotions path to prevent anyone from disturbing his seclusion. But at this moment, at the foot of the secluded mountain, there was a series of screams and shouts. Many of the guards were secretly shocked when they heard it. What's going on? Is someone fighting their way up? Who's attacking the secluded mountain? Swoosh, 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 swoosh sounds rang out consecutively in the middle of the mountain. Streams of crimson thin threads flashed past, and in that instant, a series of agonizing cries rang out. Several tens of the illusory emotions path's disciples were slashed into minced meat. The red thin threads were white Azura's many strands of hair. The crimson demonic vengeance art he cultivated used the Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis to temper his hair like how one would temper a magical treasure. After reaching the Tiangang realm, each strand of hair was like the legendary flying sword. They could slice through gold and jade with ease, and they could even break through Qi field. They were the best at restraining armies that were connected by Qi field. White Azura walked toward the top of the secluded mountain, and no one could make him stop in his tracks. White Azura was not the only one. Heavenly Yiksha also made a move. The muscles all over his body made explosive sounds, and his thick joints looked like steel bars. He charged forward like a tank charging through an infantry formation, killing his way up the secluded mountain as if there was no one there. With the two Tiangang realm experts as the vanguard, the remaining disciples from the Blood River path desolate era path, sinister ghost path, and myriad poison path swarmed forward. Within a short period of time, the illusory emotions path's disciples were defeated. Just then, a faint phantom image plunged down from the mountain like a bolt of lightning, landing right before White Azura. Zhao Yinglan. White Azura, you're courting death. With an explosive crackle, piercing white light soared into the sky. The forest within a range of 100 meters was destroyed by the impact waves from the collision of their gangchis. A large half of the crimson-red strands of hair were broken by the intense gangchis, and White Azura retreated over 10 steps. Each step he took caused the ground to crack. What a great illusory emotions path's sect master. Come and receive a punch from me. Seeing that White Azura was in a disadvantageous position, Heavenly Yiksha laughed out loud. The gangchis throughout his body exploded like an airship's engine, bringing along a gust of strong gales as he charged out toward Zhao Yinglan. However, even though the two of them joined forces and surrounded Zhao Yinglan, they were still pushed back repeatedly. They felt that Zhao Yinglan was currently like the eye of a huge typhoon. No matter what kind of attacks landed on her, they seemed to have no effect at all. Instead, they would be rebounded and hit their companions. It's the illusory emotions path's illusory demonic rotation. Be careful. Don't let her borrow your strength to attack you. Heavenly Yiksha let out an astonished cry. At the next moment, several tens of strands of White Azura's hair slashed onto his body, creating a myriad of sparks from the friction. White Azura let out a stifled snort and was sent flying by Heavenly Yiksha's fist force. It's useless. Zhao Yinglan was like a goddess amidst a tempest, floating amidst the endless gangchis. She said slowly, my illusory demonic rotation excels in group battles. It doesn't make a difference to me whether there's one or two of you. Seeing how Zhao Yinglan had the upper hand in the battle, many illusory emotions path's disciples cheered. However, just then, another 3 figures charged out. They were a man in white robes, a priest in green robes, and a lady with eerie ghostly auras. The 3 of them were the sect masters of the desolate era path, myriad poison path, and sinister ghost path. Seeing the 3 of them appear together, Zhao Yinglan was also surprised. White Azura was struck by another punch and said furiously, "What are you guys waiting for? Attack together and take down this demonic woman." Hearing this, the 3 of them exchanged a helpless glance. At the next moment, their gangchis joined together and dashed out toward Zhao Yinglan. "I'm sorry, Sect Master Zhao." With the 3 of them making their moves, strong gales immediately blew, poison gas soared into the sky, and a myriad of ghostly shadows flew about. Although the powers of each of the 6 Tiangang realm experts' moves had been condensed to an extreme, their prowess was still world-shaking. They fought to the point where mountains and rivers were overturned, and large areas of the Serene Mountain collapsed. Countless Xiantian realm and Disha realm experts joined their chi fields together, barely managing to fend off the waves of repercussive wave. White Azura's and Heavenly Yiksha's countenances were extremely grim. It was because the 5 of them had joined forces and were only barely able to suppress Zhao Yinglan. Chapter 1042. Blood Sea took a light step with the tip of his feet, and he flew up along the mountain path, as if he had lost the restrictions of gravity. His blood-colored long robes fluttered under the strong gales, as if he was covered in burning blood flames. Fei Li followed behind Blood Sea, and looked at the battlefield in the distance. There would occasionally be astonishing air explosions erupting, large areas of mountain ranges collapsing, and sand soaring into the sky. She could not help but reveal a horrified expression in her eyes. Even though the world was in chaos and the flames of war were rising everywhere, this was the first time there was a battle between 6 Tiangang realm experts. Fei Li's heart swayed, almost unable to control herself. "Young master, are we really not going to care about them?" she could not help but ask. Blood Sea threw a glance at the battlefield in the distance, and the blood-colored vortexes in his eyes kept on spinning. It was as if he could see through the layers of explosive air currents and the splattering sand to see the situation in the center of the battlefield clearly. In his eyes, Zhao Yinglan's illusory demonic rotation had already been unleashed to an extreme. Every bit of essential qi and power was not wasted at all. All of them cleverly clashed together with heavenly yiksha and the other four's qi fields, either reversing, deflecting, or trembling. The 5 of them's attacks were all neutralized, even allowing them to attack each other. The illusory emotions path's illusory demonic rotation is truly an unrivaled technique for group battles. Zhao Yinglan's true powers aren't that much stronger than the 5 of them, but she can still hold on under their joint attacks, Bloodsea said calmly. However, her illusory demonic rotation has yet to reach a perfect realm. Each time they exchange blows, she still needs to use her gang qis as a guide. She can't fully borrow the other party's powers, and her gang qis are depleted at an extremely fast rate. In the end, he came to a firm judgment: it's just a matter of time before she loses. Fei Li naturally believed in Bloodsea's judgment. Hearing that, she said joyfully, "Then from today onward, the sacred sect's 7 paths will be under young master's control. This is inevitable. No matter how the process changes, the outcome has long been decided." Bloodsea's gaze was indifferent, and the vortexes in his eyes spun increasingly faster. It was as if he had a panoramic view of the entire battlefield. However, when he saw the illusory emotions path's people's expressions and setup, he could not help but frown. Interesting. Right now, although Zhao Yinglan was at a disadvantage, be it the people from the illusory emotions path or Zhao Yinglan herself, there was no hint of panic on their faces. Bloodsea could even tell that none of the illusory emotions path's elders and disciples had the intention of stepping forward to help him. Instead, they seemed to be guarding the path leading to the top of the mountain, as if they were guarding something. There's definitely something amiss when there's an abnormality. I want to see what you guys are hiding. Bloodsea's eyes narrowed slightly. He turned into a stream of blood flames and dashed up the mountain. In the blink of an eye, a stream of blood flames had already charged out several thousand meters toward the top of the mountain along the mountain path. When the many illusory emotions path's disciples saw this, they immediately bellowed furiously and charged forward. Ye of. As the strongest faction among the demon sect's 7 paths in the past few decades, the illusory emotions path also had the most experts among the various sections. Even though they had been caught off guard in the beginning and a batch of them had been killed by Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura, there were still over 1,000 Xiantian realm experts set up on the Serene Mountains line of defense. There were also several tens of Disha realm cultivators on standby. Now that they were suddenly under attack, the essential qis of over 1,000 cultivators erupted simultaneously. The qi field connected together and pushed out toward Bloodsea with an overwhelming force. However, faced with the gushing qi field attack, Bloodsea turned a blind eye. The gang qis behind him surged, and the sound of crashing waves rang out. A stretch of blood light soared into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into an endless sea of blood that clashed out toward the gang qis. Rumble! The qi field and the sea of blood instantly clashed together. The qi field, which could tear apart city walls and destroy mountains, was unable to withstand a single blow from the seething sea of blood. It collapsed upon contact, and in the blink of an eye, it was suppressed by the sea of blood. The countenances of over 1,000 illusory emotions paths experts changed, and they spewed out a mouthful of blood. At the next moment, the overwhelming sea of blood came pressing down explosively. Although the many illusory emotions paths experts summoned their essential qis and kept on supporting the qi field to clash against the sea of blood time and time again, they were still pushed back repeatedly. In the blink of an eye, over 100 Xiantian realm experts were drawn in by the sea of blood, melting into a pool of blood in the blink of an eye, completely merging into the sea of blood. The illusory emotions path's disciples were pushed back repeatedly, but Blood Sea did not care at all. He took one step at a time like he was taking a leisurely stroll in the direction of the mountain's peak. With this move of his, the endless sea of blood also pressed down toward the illusory emotions path's line of defense with him at the center. Streams of viscous blood rivers were like extremely poisonous and sinister things in the world. Everything they came into contact with, be it cultivators, plants, or even the mountain itself, kept on melting, turning into a part of the sea of blood in the end. Seeing that the overwhelming sea of blood was about to engulf the entire mountain, the remaining illusory emotions path's disciples still did not back off. They went all out and activated their chi fields, delaying the rise of the sea of blood. Aren't they afraid of death? At the sight of this scene, Blood Sea's brows raised. You guys have successfully piqued my interest. At this moment, Blood Sea was really curious about what the people from the illusory emotions path were protecting. On the other side of the battlefield, Zhao Yinglan seemed to have sensed the seething blood waves that had suddenly appeared. Her chi waves seethed all over her body, and she darted out fiercely from the 5 people's encirclement. Gang chis gushed out, causing the atmosphere to tremble, and the sound she emitted was so loud that it could shake up a distance of 100 lis. Stop it! Blood Sea, do you want to die? However, she had just dashed out when Heavenly Yiksha and the other 4 caught up to her and suppressed her once again. Zhao Yinglan, you'd better be more concerned about yourself. Put in more effort. Her aura is already unstable, and she doesn't have enough gang chis. However, Blood Sea smiled, and the corners of his lips curled up. The more Zhao Yinglan and the others from the illusory emotions path tried their best to stop him, the more curious he became about what was up there. Blood Sea took a step forward, and as the blood waves seethed around him, he flew out toward the mountain's peak like he was riding on a blood dragon. Fei Li, who was following behind him, was also swept up by the blood waves and followed closely behind him. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them had already passed through many mountain paths and several hundred illusory emotions paths experts. Countless streams of chi fields smashed out toward the 2 of them, but they were all blocked by the blood waves. Some of them even bounced back, causing the chi fields to collapse repeatedly. Streams of air currents seethed out, and large areas of the mountain collapsed. Many disciples cried out agonizingly as they were swept into the mudslides. A soft pitter-patter rang out, and as the seething blood rivers flowed, Blood Sea and Fei Li landed before the door of the hall at the mountain's peak. Crimson light flashed in Blood Sea's eyes, and the 2 blood-colored vortexes spun increasingly rapidly. Chapter 1043. The blood-colored vortex in Blood Sea's eyes was the Blood River Path's supreme technique, the Netherworld Tribulation Eye. It could see through the profoundness of how all living things in the world operated and was an unrivaled martial arts' remarkable ability. With this remarkable ability, the speed at which he comprehended martial arts was at least 10 times faster than before. His efficiency in subduing his enemies and finding their weaknesses as well as ways to counter the various sects and factions' martial arts was also astonishingly fast. At this moment, when he activated the Netherworld Tribulation Eye once again, he could immediately sense a man sitting cross-legged in the hall through the layers of metal walls. However, before he could continue checking out the other party's situation, a stream of chi field descended from the sky. The chi field turned into layers of millstones that were intertwined with opposing forces. Wherever it passed by, the friction in the atmosphere would produce streams of thunderbolts and flames. It was like a great millstone of the world, wanting to crush Blood Sea into minced meat. Faced with this attack that descended from the sky, Blood Sea raised his head and took a glance. Then he tapped out with a finger, and a stream of blood light pierced through the sky. It was like a laser cannon, shattering and dissipating the great millstone of the world that was formed by the chi field. Simultaneously, several tens of illusory emotions path's disciples had already caught up, blocking the way in front of the hall. Fu Daoxian, who was in the lead, looked at Blood Sea with a grim countenance and bellowed fiercely, "Blood Sea, stop it. If you offend the important person in the hall, everyone from the Blood River path can forget about surviving." Important person? Blood Sea smiled softly. I'm curious. What kind of important person is there in this world who is so important that even I can't meet him? With that, he pushed out his palm gently, and a pungent stench of blood soared into the air. Overwhelming blood waves engulfed the entire hall as he pushed out his palm. Stop him! Fu Daoxian let out a soft bellow, and everyone's essential qis immediately gathered on her hand. The qi field swelled up, turning into waves of invisible rotating wheels that blocked Blood Sea's path. The sea of blood and the spinning wheel collided and a series of deafening explosions rang out. The spinning wheel brought with it a twisting force, diverting most of the power of the sea of blood away. However, the power of the waves of blood was simply too strong. In just a few seconds, the force field completely collapsed. Fu Daoxian and the others cried out in shock and retreated into the palace. Fu Daoxian, as expected of the illusory emotions path's female saint of this generation. To be able to withstand my palm attack for a single breath's time, it's something you can be proud of for your entire life. Blood Sea let out a long laugh and brought Fei Li along as he followed them in. Wherever he passed by, many metal walls would be broken through by the blood waves around him. In the blink of an eye, the entire hall was encompassed by layers and layers of blood rivers. The pungent smell of blood seemed as if it was going to materialize, making one feel like vomiting. In the hall, the illusory emotions path's disciples with Fu Daoxian in the lead were surrounding a man. That man was seated cross-legged with his eyes tightly shut. He seemed to be circulating his martial arts. It was Fang Xinjian, who was cultivating in seclusion and comprehending the great Tao's testimony. Looking at Fang Xinjian in the hall, Blood Sea let out a soft laugh. You guys are protecting this man? Fei Li frowned, seeming to have recognized Fang Xinjian's identity. She said in disbelief, This is… Fang Xian? Fang Xian? A gleam flashed in Blood Sea's eyes. That young emperor from the divine capital, Fang Xian? Fei Li quickly nodded and said, That's him. When I went to the divine capital 3 years ago, I saw him from afar on the street. Although he has changed a little, this appearance is indeed him. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is. To think that this young emperor has been abducted by the illusory emotions path to this place. Blood Sea laughed coldly. The heavens are really on my side. He's mine now. As he spoke, the blood waves around him trembled slightly, instantly turning into many blood dragons that charged out toward Fang Xinjian. Seething powers circulated in the blood dragons' bodies, condensing dragon claws, dragon scales, dragon horns, and dragon whiskers. They appeared very lifelike like a real dragon. Although Fu Daoxian and the others tried their best to resist, how could they possibly be a match for Blood Sea? The blood dragons reached out with their claws, and violent powers gushed forth. Streams of force shattered the chi field, and many illusory emotions path's disciples spewed out blood and died from the vibrations. As the air currents from the collision seethed out, the entire hall's roof was sent flying. The surrounding walls shattered abruptly, exposing the entire hall to sunlight. On the other hand, even though Fu Daoxian had received guidance from Zhao Yinglan and had gained a basic mastery of the illusory demonic rotation, he was still seriously injured by this attack. All the bones in his body were shattered, and his internal organs were ruptured. He was only left with a bit of essential qi to forcefully hang on to his life. However, the blood dragon seemed as if it had just crushed a few ants. It continued to fly toward Fang Xinjian without stopping, grabbing out fiercely toward his head with one of its dragon claws. However, just as the dragon claws were about to grab onto Fang Xinjian, it came to an abrupt stop and could no longer move at all. Fang Xinjian opened his eyes slowly. Right now, his eyes were filled with impatience. The great Tao's testimony had given him too many surprises. Right now, all of his computational abilities, including the abundant computational abilities of two regions, were being used to derive the profoundness within it. He no longer paid any attention to anything else. In fact, if Blood Sea had not made a move against him, it would not matter to him even if everyone from the illusory emotions path died. Compared to what he was doing, these things were too insignificant. Right now, just the action of opening his eyes had caused the blood dragon before him to break down completely. The dragon's scales and claws shattered one by one, eventually exploding and turning into a pool of blood that fell onto the ground. Intentional. Blood Sea smiled. Not only did Fang Xinjian's performance not make him panic, but it also made him curious. However, before he could finish saying this, a palm pressed down on his face, covering his entire mouth. Trash. Blood Sea only felt as if his head was being squeezed by two continents. The gang cheese in his body burst out explosively, and streams of blood waves drowned out the entire mountain. The ground under his feet melted rapidly. However, no matter how he performed it, the big hand that was grabbing onto his face did not give in at all. On the contrary, the power that came from it became increasingly stronger, causing his bones to release kacha-kacha sounds as if they were going to break down at any moment. At the next moment, the endless sea of blood shattered, turning into a rain of blood that fell onto the ground. A human figure shot out from the top of the mountain like a crimson meteor. Along the way, the air exploded, pierced through the atmosphere, and smashed out streams of air currents and sonic booms. In the end, it collided onto the other side of the battlefield. Wherever it passed by, the ground would crack open, and the mountains would collapse. Smoke and dust flew up, and countless rocks and soil splattered out. That human figure smashed out a crater that was several hundred meters wide in front of the battlefield where Heavenly Yiksha, White Azura, and the others were. It also caused the battle between the 6 Tiangang realm experts to come to a halt. The 5 of them joined forces and circulated their gang cheese, fending off the strong gales brought about by the impact. Heavenly Yiksha then waved his hand, dispersing all the smoke and dust. Under the 5 of them's astonished gazes, Blood Sea lay in the center of the crater like a broken cloth bag. Most of his body had turned into a pool of mud. However, the most terrifying thing was still his head, which had almost been clenched out of shape. The reason why it could be seen that his head had been clenched was because there was still an imprint of a hand clenching down on his face. The 5-finger imprints were extremely obvious, firmly imprinted on his face along with the broken and deformed bones and flesh that had been pressed together. Chapter 1044. As the sea of blood fell, the entire battlefield became silent in an instant. The 6 Tiangang realm experts, who had been engaged in a great battle earlier, all stopped and looked in Blood Sea's direction in great astonishment. This was especially so for Heavenly Yiksha and White Azura. The two of them understood very well how powerful Blood Sea was. Having been subdued by Blood Sea and given guidance in martial arts for so many years, they knew too much about how terrifying this heaven-blessed cultivator was. Therefore, even though their martial arts had improved tremendously, they still did not dare to have any thoughts of rebelling. However, to think that such an unfathomable expert had been tossed down like a dead dog. Who was his opponent? How powerful was he? At the thought of this, Heavenly Yiksha's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He turned and saw that White Azura was looking at him with a familiar gaze. That expression was one of terror. In the past, they had always seen this expression on other people's faces. Heavenly Yiksha could imagine that his current countenance was definitely not any better than White Azura's. Just then, a green shadow flashed by. Fei Li ran down from the mountain top while screaming. She circulated her movement technique to the extreme, bringing along a series of afterimages as she chased after Blood Sea. Young Master! Looking at Blood Sea, who was like a broken doll, her eyes turned red, and her hands kept on trembling. However, she did not know where to place them. Simultaneously, the endless smoke and dust were repelled by an invisible force. As an invisible pressure came gushing forth, a figure descended from the sky and slowly landed in the center of the battlefield. It was Fang Xinjian, who had been disturbed from his seclusion. At the sight of Fang Xinjian's appearance, Zhao Yinglan immediately dropped to one knee and said solemnly, "Your subject deserves to die for disturbing your majesty. Your majesty, please forgive me." Within a short moment, all the illusory emotions path's disciples were half kneeling on the ground. Essential qis flowed continuously, turning into a stretch of qi field that shook the atmosphere. Zhao Yinglan and the other illusory emotions path's disciples and elders were all convinced of Fang Xinjian's superiority through the exchanges and martial arts guidance during this period of time. They wanted to cling onto this super strong thigh with all their hearts. When Heavenly Yiksha and the others saw this scene, they wore astonished and bewildered expressions. Right now, Fei Li's eyes were filled with a chaotic gleam. She did not notice Zhao Yinglan's words or the illusory emotions path's actions. Right now, her brain was operating at 100% capacity. Therefore, all of her attention was focused on a single problem: how to let Blood Sea survive. Young Master is someone who can change the world. He is the last hope of the entire Saint Gate. No matter what, we must let him live. In order to achieve the goal in her heart, Fei Li's brain was working to its limits, and all her attention was focused on this one and only goal. No matter how her brain worked and how active her sea of consciousness was, there was only one solution she could think of at this moment. Her body tilted slightly, and she knelt on the ground with a bang. Then, she prostrated herself on the ground, trying her best to show her submission. "We surrender." Fei Li's voice trembled slightly as she said the only solution she could think of right now: "We surrender." When Fei Li said this, the minds of Heavenly Yiksha, White Azura, and the others went blank. They looked at this scene in a daze, as if they were unable to make the correct reaction. However, there was one person present who absolutely couldn't accept this outcome. "Shut up." Blood Sea's body trembled slightly, and his heavily injured body seemed to have recovered a little. He glared at Fang Xinjian and said, "Who asked you to surrender?" As he spoke, his body started to recover at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. His crushed flesh was squeezed out by new, healthy flesh, turning into pools of blood that dropped onto the ground. Damn it, if it wasn't because I've attained a breakthrough in the Northern Dark Rebirth technique, young master. At the sight of this scene, Fei Li cried tears of joy. She immediately went up to help Blood Sea up. All sorts of energies in the world, especially Tiangang Qis and Disha Qis, gushed into Blood Sea's body incessantly. They rapidly healed his flesh and replenished his Gang Qis. At the sight of this scene, Fang Xinjian was slightly stunned. He then threw a glance toward Heavenly Yiksha and the others, and a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes. "You've unified the various demon sect paths and even absorbed the powers of the Great Tao's testimony?" Hearing Fang Xinjian's question, Blood Sea was slightly stunned and did not reply. However, his gaze toward Fang Xinjian was now even more guarded. It was already amazing for ordinary experts to know of the Demon Emperor's legacy. Other than the 3 mountains 4 peaks Shaoxin, Blood Sea had never encountered anyone else who knew of the Great Tao's testimony. However, although Blood Sea did not reply, Fang Xinjian saw the changes in his countenance. "Excellent. I was just fretting about not being able to find the key. I didn't expect that you'd send yourself to my doorstep." As he spoke, Fang Xinjian once again put out his claw. It was the exact same action and stance as before, grabbing out toward Blood Sea's face. Seeing Fang Xinjian's actions, a hint of intense humiliation flashed on Blood Sea's face. It was this move earlier that had caused him to suffer an unprecedented humiliation. This time around, Blood Sea did not fight it head-on. Instead, he instantly turned into countless afterimages. It was as if he had turned into over 100 people, scattering out and dodging in all directions. The speed of each of the silhouettes caused a series of sonic booms. The strong gales they stirred up gathered together and kept on stacking up, as if they were going to form a tempest. However, at the next moment, Fang Xinjian's palm had already appeared before his actual body without a sound. Blood Sea's countenance changed abruptly, and he cut across an impossible arc in midair. The surrounding gravitational forces seemed to change along with his movements, dodging Fang Xinjian's palm. However, in the blink of an eye, that palm had once again appeared before him. It was even a little closer. Blood Sea let out an enraged bellow, circulated his gang cheese, and his figure changed once again. Within a short few seconds, Blood Sea performed the illusory demonic movement technique, wave-treading subtle steps, wind god's legs. Many extremely powerful movement techniques were performed by Blood Sea. He even brought about changes in the weather, causing gravity to become abnormal and space to distort. The many Tiangang realm cultivators in the surroundings felt refreshed, and their gazes were filled with astonishment. His speed was so fast and the changes were so great that only Tiangang realm cultivators could barely see through the profoundness. The remaining Disha and Xiantian realm experts could not even see Blood Sea's silhouette clearly. None of the 6 Tiangang realm experts who were watching the battle had expected that a person could learn so many unprecedented movement techniques. However, the more he kept on dodging, the more flustered Blood Sea's eyes became. It was because he discovered that no matter how he tried to dodge, Fang Xinjian's palm got increasingly closer. It was like an inescapable nightmare. Chapter 1045. Fang Xinjian's expression remained calm. He watched as Blood Sea stimulated his potential time and time again under his coercion. He watched as more and more of the world's powers, especially the Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese, were mobilized. Fang Xinjian gained a deeper understanding of the circulation of the Great Tao's testimony. Simultaneously, he was even more certain that Blood Sea had absorbed the authority of the Great Tao's testimony and possessed the ability to mobilize a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese. He could even make use of the circulation of a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese to perform all sorts of unbelievable martial arts. This meant that Blood Sea did not need to deplete any powers. With just a single thought, he could draw out and control a tremendous amount of Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese. He could also change the 4 fundamental forces and produce all sorts of extraordinary phenomena. He could even exert a great influence on the essential cheese and gang cheese in other Disha realm and Tiangang realm experts' bodies with a single thought. If it was said that Tiangang realm experts were equivalent to ordinary Tier 1 divine level experts, then Blood Sea, who possessed the Great Tao's testimony, was equivalent to reaching Tier 5 of the divine level. However, it had not been long since Blood Sea obtained the Great Tao's testimony and had yet to get used to this power. He was unable to unleash his full powers, and he had yet to truly attain a breakthrough to the Tiangang realm and reach the legendary Great Tao realm. It's about time. After understanding the changes, Fang Xinjian no longer held back. Sword intense flashed in void space, and at the next moment, 4 streams of blood exploded on Blood Sea's body. His 4 limbs were instantly slashed off. Ah! A furious bellow rang out. At this critical moment of life and death, Blood Sea only felt that his mind was clear, and his thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. It was just like how it had been for Shaoshan earlier. At the most critical moment, his martial arts also showed signs of attaining a breakthrough. Everything in the surroundings seemed to have gradually slowed down, and everything seemed to be progressing toward an endless state of stillness. Just as Blood Sea was about to achieve the breakthrough that he had been dreaming of, an extremely powerful martial will swept out. It was like a strong gale sweeping up fallen leaves, sweeping through Blood Sea's consciousness. All of his thoughts and memories were blasted into pieces, and he temporarily lost consciousness. Grabbing Blood Sea's head with one hand, Fang Shijian lifted him up high. Seeing that Blood Sea's severed limbs continued to recover despite losing consciousness, a satisfied smile flashed in Fang Shijian's eyes. Ah! Right at this moment, Fei Li, who was behind him, had already charged forward. Her palms brought about a myriad of clear shadows that enveloped Fang Shijian. But in the next moment she felt a pain in her stomach, and her whole body was sent flying at an even faster speed. With a boom, she crashed into a mountain, and her whole body was smashed into the rock stratum hundreds of meters deep. He looked at his stomach in a daze. There was a big bloody hole there. A strong sense of unwillingness and regret flashed in her eyes. Moments later, as she died, her essential qi dissipated into the air. Countless streams of Disha qis returned to the earth. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Who else wants to fight? After killing Fei Li with a single strike, Fang Shijian's gaze swept across the entire area. Everyone felt a strong sense of threat, as though there was a cold light on their backs. On the other side, Heavenly Yiksha clenched his fists tightly for a moment. A hint of hesitation flashed across his eyes, but he relaxed in the end. He's too strong. He and we aren't existences of the same dimension. White Azura's head was lowered, and his eyes were narrowed slightly as he stared at his feet. It was as if there were some profoundness hidden there. I can't move. I can't move at all. It's the killing intent and the sword intent. It's like there's something pressing against my heart. I'll die if I move even the slightest bit. This was the case for Blood Sea's two generals. The other Desolate Era Path's Sect Master, Myriad Poison Path's Sect Master, and Sinister Ghost Path's Sect Master were all looking down, not showing any intention of stepping forward. However, these Tiangang realm experts did not step forward. Instead, a few Blood River Path's elders and disciples charged out. They were clearly the most loyal subordinates of Blood River Path. The moment they came out, essential qis gushed out, and streams of demonic blood light flashed to and fro. Let go of the sect master. However, at the next moment, invisible sword intents slashed onto their bodies, killing all of these Blood River Path's loyal subordinate. These Blood River Path's disciples exploded and scattered on the mountain, leaving behind patches of blood and flesh that splattered on top of the rock stratum. After over 10 people were killed consecutively, not a single person from the Blood River Path's team dared to charge out. Fresh blood splattered before them, and White Azura and the others lowered their heads even lower, like ostriches that had their heads buried. Even their foreheads were faintly dripping with cold sweat. It was because none of them had been able to see through the few sword attacks that Fang Shijian had casually slashed out earlier. At this moment, Fang Shijian was a terrifying character who was like a god or a demon to them. However, Fang Shijian did not pay them any heed. Instead, he stared at Blood Sea in his hand and said softly, It's still not complete." He then recalled the process where he had forcefully relied on his powers to break through the Great Tao trial. Faintly, he seemed to have entered deep into the source of this world, arriving at the source of the Tiangang and Disha systems. Over there, he seemed to see an extremely massive figure that could support the heavens and the earth. It was a pity that even with his powers, he was unable to hold on for too long under the endless Tiangang and Disha powers. In just a short instant, the giant figure disappeared, and his consciousness once again returned to the real world. There are two main reasons why I'm unable to enter deeper. One reason might be that I'm from another world and don't belong to this world's Tiangang and Disha cycle. I'm a virus, an outsider. The other reason is probably that the Great Tao's testimony I have is not complete. Back then, the Demon Emperor had split the Great Tao's testimony into 7 parts, representing the 7 types of authority to control the Tiangang and Disha qis. Right now, Blood Sea had gathered 6 types of authority, and Fang Xinjian had 1 piece. However, neither of them was truly complete. Right now, Fang Xinjian planned on gathering the pieces and making them complete once again so that he could explore this world's ultimate profoundness. If I'm able to understand the profoundness of the Tiangang indicia in this world, my high-dimensional sword arts might be able to take another step forward to be able to create a Tiangang indicia cycle that stood above the entire world, bringing the birth, aging, sickness, and death of humans, as well as martial arts cultivation into the cycle, and to be able to define the entire world within a spatial fragment. The knowledge, realm, and profoundness contained within this was already in no way inferior to Miracle World's ether particles and the 9-tiered heavens system. At the next moment, countless runes that flickered with faint light appeared in Fang Xinjian's mind. They gathered into a light spot in the blink of an eye and flew into Blood Sea's forehead with a swoosh. This was the great Tao's testimony that Fang Xinjian had obtained from the illusory demonic path's demon emperor's legacy. Come, let me take a look at this world's profoundness. Boom! Endless white light burst out from Blood Sea's body, and his 4 limbs completely regenerated in the blink of an eye. The Tiangang cheese and Disha cheese within a range of several thousand lis gushed crazily toward his body. Fang Xinjian's palm grabbed onto Blood Sea's head, and his martial will connected to Blood Sea's brain incessantly. It connected to Blood Sea's vision, hearing, smell, touch, and consciousness, sensing all of Blood Sea's current feelings. Chapter 1046. Fang Xinjian only felt that his consciousness seemed to have instantly broken through the restraints of time and space. It was as if he had entered a boundless ocean, and then he continued to sink, and sink. Throughout the entire process, there seemed to be countless scenes flashing before his eyes. It was as if he had seen the birth and end of the world, as well as the intersecting and circulation of space-time. It was only when he had sunk into the deepest part of the ocean that a figure that was so massive that Fang Xinjian was unable to estimate its size even after exhausting all of his sensory means and computing abilities appeared before him. However, even though he was unable to estimate its size, Fang Xinjian was able to see the silhouette of the figure clearly. It was a man with an indomitable spirit and an extremely strong and mighty body. Every inch of his body and every finger seemed to contain powers that could penetrate through the heavens and the earth. The aura he emitted also surpassed that of any living creature or non-living creature that Fang Xinjian knew of. Fang Xinjian understood that he had not really seen the other party. It was just that the other party's image and information had been sent directly into his mind. At the next moment, he seemed to have suddenly entered deep into the man's body. He could sense each and every one of the most basic particles and spatial units in the other party's body. Each of the spatial fragments, which could not be discerned by the naked eye, contained a world. His body was formed from countless spatial fragments as the most basic unit. Each fragment contained a world and a planet. What level has this person's body, his mass, and his energy reached? Probably the entire Milky Way galaxy's mass is unable to compare to his. Who on earth is he? Just as Fang Xinjian was feeling astonished by the scene before him, his consciousness leaped once again, arriving at a piece of spatial fragment on the other party's arm. As he continued to enter deeper, an azure planet soon appeared before his eyes. This is the planet I'm on. At the next moment, the atmosphere, land, mountains, and rivers were zoomed in. Fang Xinjian saw the serene mountain which had been smashed into a mess, the Tiangang realm expert who wore a horrified expression, and himself who was holding Blood Sea in his hand with a blank gaze. This is the secret of this world. To think that it's just a part of that person's body. He seems to have lost consciousness. Just as Fang Xinjian was recalling the large amount of information he had just received, he also felt the changes in the world around him. At this moment, the world in his eyes seemed to be completely different from before. The wind blowing on his body, the light shining on his back, the particles moving intensely in the air, and the slowly moving earth under his feet. Everything became familiar and strange at the same time. Fang Xinjian felt that they gave him a very intimate feeling, a feeling that they were one. It felt as if the entire world had become a part of him. Fang Xinjian couldn't help but reach out his hand and grab at the sky. Unfortunately, as his thoughts changed, the entire sky did not respond at all. It was as if the feeling of being one with the world was just an illusion. That's right. I'm only sensing it after all. Fang Xinjian turned to look at Blood Sea, who was in his hand. Right now, Blood Sea's body had been completely restored, and there seemed to be countless nebulae flowing in his eyes. He emitted a strange aura as if he had become one with the entire world. He was also a little similar to the male figure that Fang Xinjian had sensed earlier. Right now, Blood Sea was charging up toward the unparalleled Great Tao realm. What Fang Xinjian had sensed earlier was what Blood Sea was feeling. However, it was just a feeling and was unable to really affect the real world. Just then, a hint of a smile broke out on Blood Sea's face. Fang Xinjian, you don't know what a foolish thing you've done. The starlight in his eyes flashed slightly, and at the next moment, he turned into an overwhelming sea of blood and broke free from Fang Xinjian's palm. You won't be able to understand. You won't be able to understand my current power. A soft p sound rang out, followed by a series of swooshing sounds. In the blink of an eye, Blood Sea had turned into a real sea of blood, and his physical body had turned into blood wave. At the next moment, streams of blood waves soared into the sky, illuminating the entire sky in a blood-red color. Blood Sea's figure, which was completely formed from blood, appeared from the endless blood waves. His arms were facing upwards, as if wanting to hug the entire sky into his embrace. You won't be able to understand what I'm feeling right now. And you don't even understand where you are. The Great Tao realm far surpasses your imagination. Right now, Blood Sea had completely sunk into the extremely wonderful feeling of being one with the world. At this moment, he felt that he was the entire world and the entire world was him. With a single thought, he was able to do all sorts of things that were unimaginable or impossible. Hearing Blood Sea's words, the countenances of everyone present changed drastically. At the next moment, Blood Sea's hands suddenly clenched into a fist, and blood started to gush out from the ground. It was as if the ground had turned into human skin. The skin was being torn apart, and a tremendous amount of blood gushed out from the surface. Not only did a tremendous amount of blood start to gush out from the ground, but even the plants, sand, and smoke also melted and turned limp, eventually turning into blood. Within a short few seconds, everyone discovered that the area under their feet was covered in blood. The area below their knees was wrapped up by blood. Everyone was astonished by this scene. To them, this method of directly changing matter and turning the world into a sea of blood was simply a miracle. Some people reached out their hands to touch the blood waves on the ground, while others kept on activating essential qis to push away the sea of blood. It's real. It's not an illusion. The ground has turned into a sea of blood. The Great Tao realm. This is the Great Tao realm. Countless people looked at this scene in astonishment, and they were so touched that tears kept on flowing out from their eyes. This was the feeling of facing the highest realm in martial arts, the astonishment they felt when they saw the ultimate goal they had been pursuing in their entire life. The corners of Heavenly Yiksha's lips twitched slightly. He put out his hand and sensed the blood traces in the air flowing past his palm. It's recorded in the ancient books that the Great Tao realm is one with the world, able to turn stone into gold and mountains into oceans. I thought that it was just the ignorance of the ancient people, but to think that it's actually true. Just then, the area of the sea of blood expanded once again. Everyone felt that the ground under their feet had become lighter, and it was as if the ground had completely turned into a sea of blood. The serene mountain within a range of 100 lis had disappeared. Regardless of whether it was the mountain terrain, rock strata, mountain peaks, or any other non-living matter, they had all been turned into a sea of blood. Regardless of whether it was the sky or the ground, everything was covered in a scarlet-red color. The crimson stench of blood seemed to connect all the way to the ends of the horizon. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.